across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company, and certainly over the last 24 hours things have been quite busy for me on social media. Lots of people getting in touch, lots of viewers and listeners, so I just want to say thank you to everybody who has done that, no matter what you had to say. There's lots to discuss today. We will be reflecting on that interview, the interview yesterday with the lawyer who is representing Hamas. We'll be talking to Nicole Lambert, a journalist who follows these things, in just a few minutes' time. On the matter of what's happening in this country as well, Parliament is being recalled tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. Full coverage on my Saturday show, which is on between 10 and half 12. We'll go down to Parliament and we'll make sure that we bring you the most important bits of that, because the Scunthorpe steel plant is under serious major trouble. They're saying, the owners are saying, they're losing about £700,000 a day as a result of that. Will the government nationalise the steel industry and come in to the rescue? Interestingly, the GMB union and Nigel Farage think the same thing. Yes. Well, what do you think? Should steel be nationalised? Should we bail them out? Should we give plenty of money to the steel industry? Or should we just say, actually, do you know what? It's a dying industry. Let's move on. 0344 499 1000. The grooming gangs, rape gangs, row continues. There's a lot going on about that, which we'll discuss. We'll also talk about the sport. We'll talk about Birmingham residents burning rubbish in the bin strike. It's just getting worse and worse. And brazen thieves filmed stripping Greggs' shelves bare across broken Britain with staff powerless to stop. Honestly, some of the detail of that big investigation by The Sun, we're going to look into that as well. Some of the video really is quite disturbing as well. We'll talk about Labour's war on the motorists. I know Ian did that as well. If you've more comments on that, you're very, very welcome to get in touch on anything you hear or see today, or indeed things you think we should be covering. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter, or you can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 here on Talk. Well, we're going to talk to Matthew Laza, the former Labour advisor, about all the things in Keir Starmer's inbox, the steel problems, the grooming gangs trouble as well. And in fact, Keir Starmer was speaking to Sky News yesterday, and he talked about his government's response to those rape gangs. This is what he had to say.
Of course, I accept the argument that there should be wider inquiries. There have been a number of inquiries. We've had hundreds of recommendations. We've had a national inquiry with 22 recommendations. My strong belief is we've got to implement those recommendations. At the moment, and under the last government, they just stacked up and sat on a shelf. So they need to be implemented. We're now implementing the recommendations from the national inquiry. 17 of them we're taking forward. Of course, if there's further local inquiries that are needed, then we put some funding behind that and they should happen. But I don't think that simply saying we need more inquiries when we haven't even acted on the ones that we've had is necessarily the only way forward.
Well, it's interesting, the money he talks about, it's £5 million, which really isn't a lot of money at all. In fact, that's more the budget of a small council would have for a month, rather than something that Keir Starmer can commit as leader of this country. So that's a very, very interesting thought on that as well. He also says he wants to smash the gangs when it comes to migration. He says he's got a lot of focus on that. What about smashing the grooming gangs, the rape gangs? What about smashing those gangs? That's what I'd like him to see. I'd like him to smash both forms of gangs there, but that is something where I think his focus should be. Very, very interestingly, yesterday, Trevor Phillips, who's the former chairman of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, he's now a broadcaster, Sir Trevor Phillips, he's actually stood for Labour as a mayoral candidate at one stage. Well, he has been very, very critical of his former party. This is what Sir Trevor Phillips had to say to your colleagues at Times Radio.
I think what the government is doing on that question is utterly shameful.
Really?
Utterly shameful. And it is so obviously political that if people who in government who are responsible for this, who are in other ways, I think completely decent people, should really be ashamed of themselves. And because it's so obvious that they're not doing this because the demographic of the people involved, as Katie Lamb, the Tory MP, said yesterday, largely Pakistani Muslim in background, and also in Labour-held seats and councils who would be offended by it. And that's clearly the reason that they're not pursuing this. And it is utterly shameful, given what has been done to these children by these men. I cannot tell you how cross I am about it.
That's Sir Trevor Phillips there speaking to your colleagues over at Times Radio. Well, Matthew Laza is a former Labour advisor. Matthew, clearly this is an issue that is tearing the Labour Party apart. We've heard from Maurice Glassman as well, from Blue Labour on this. We've heard from quite a number of people on these issues, and we know that there may well be a backbench rebellion at some stage. I wonder whether you think Keir Starmer or Trevor Phillips is right.
Well, I'm not sure that I think either of them have got it absolutely spot on. I think that what is absolutely clear is that the government has got itself into a mess on this. The Starmer line, the Alexis J inquiry, which was into the wider issue of child sexual abuse and exploitation, looking at historic cases in particular after all those cases, the high-profile cases that came up sort of about a decade ago, has got recommendations. They haven't been implemented. They should have been implemented. But the government then said, if you remember, had a big row and said, we don't need a national inquiry specifically into grooming gangs, but if local inquiries following the example in Telford are helpful, we'll pay for them. But they've just got themselves in a complete mess because you had Jess Phillips. And, you know, the problem is that Jess Phillips is one of the most high-profile ministers. She's not one of the most senior ministers, but she had a very high-profile when Labour was in opposition. She writes books, appears on media all the time. And then she pops up in the House of Commons 5 minutes before it breaks up for the Easter recess and says, maybe we'll water this down. Now, you then have a sort of 12, 15-hour period where nobody knows what the policy is. And I think that is the issue, is that it's that there's just a mess. Clearly, I think that local inquiries may well be useful, but they need to happen. And saying, they may not happen, is not enough. So I don't agree with Trevor Phillips and Maurice Glassman.
It's bringing a lot more confusion over this, isn't it? It's muddying the waters, I would argue. And also £5 million really isn't a lot at all. Maurice Glassman, who I think you were just about to mention there, who's Lord Glassman, who's part of the Blue Labour group, he's quite close to Morgan McSweeney, who is the Chief of Staff to Keir Starmer. So I wonder what his influence will be. But the Blue Labour group said in a statement, this is an influential group within Labour, this is a national evil that requires a national response. Local authorities lack the necessary capabilities and legal authority to carry out investigations, and often they are in need of investigation themselves. We need a national inquiry with full statutory powers. The decades-long abuse of young girls and its cover-up is a sickness that must be exorcised from the body politic, says Blue Labour. Labour is committed to reforming the state and its institutions, to restoring trust and consent in government, and to renewing the social covenant that binds us together. We can start the renewal here. A lot of people will have thought this is a debate that's over. This is a debate where the government, was under a lot of pressure to have a national inquiry. They said, we've had national inquiries. There have been loads of recommendations, as Keir Starmer was saying there. Let's implement them and have local inquiries where necessary. Now this has bubbled up again, and there are a lot of people who are really annoyed about it. How does Keir Starmer get over this politically, but also in terms of making sure that those victims of rape gangs get justice, and that this can't happen anymore, because it is happening right now?
Which is obviously the absolutely most important thing to happen, is that justice is got for the victims and the future incidents are prevented. So I think the government needs to, if it's going to try and stick to the line of doing these local inquiries, it has to get the local inquiries going and get them going now.
Let me ask you about Parliament being recalled because of what is happening with British Steel. The government says it's negotiating with British Steel's owners in good faith, and all options remain on the table. This is Parliament coming back tomorrow morning, first time on a Saturday since I think they debated Afghanistan back in the day. Number 10 says the Prime Minister has been clear. His government will always act in the national interest. All actions we take are in the name of British industry, British jobs and for British workers. Tomorrow Parliament will be recalled to debate the steel industry special measure Measures bill. The bill provides the government with the power to direct steel companies in England, which we use to protect the Scunthorpe site. It enables the UK government to preserve capability and ensure public safety. That's what number 10 says. It also ensures all options remain viable for the future of the plant. That's essentially nationalisation, which the GMB union and indeed Nigel Farage are calling for, which is an interesting combination of political bedfellows you may not have necessarily put together, Matthew.
It sure is, and I think actually the two issues tie together because they're about showing that Labour, keeping Labour MPs in the red wall in their seats, as well as the national interest. I hope the two can align. But I think clearly, with the world as uncertain as it is, with tariffs, which are actually steel is perhaps the sector where tariffs actually have historically played the biggest part. You said earlier, is it an out-of-date industry? No, it isn't. We all use steel in our cars and obviously in the defence equipment that we are going to be increasingly.
But does it need to be made in Britain?
No, it doesn't. But obviously, in a world where trade across borders cannot be guaranteed, and this is such a fundamental product, I think the government has no choice, and I think that they're doing the right thing. I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody to oppose this. The Tories, whose free market instincts will clash against their populist instincts to try and deal with the reform threat, actually are the ones who I think might have the biggest problem. And this will be interesting to see what the Tory front bench do tomorrow, whether they oppose it, because obviously they presided for 14 years over the hollowing out of the British steel industry. Now, at least the government is perhaps at the 11th minute of the 11th hour grabbing the issue by the neck and ensuring that we don't have zero steel production in Britain, which really would be the end of Britain as an industrial country. We cannot rely on steel from across the globe as we've seen now, particularly we're not in the EU as well, so who knows what would happen in terms of barriers in the future. We can't have no steel production at all. So I think the government's doing the right thing, and as you say, it will be welcomed, I think, very popular with the public, popular with the unions, popular with reform supporters. What will the Tories do? Will they say this is a return to the 1970s, or will they realise this is where the public are at?
Matthew, thank you for your thoughts on that. Matthew Laza there, former Labour advisor. Thanks to Bill in Carmarthen, who sent me a text as well. 87222 is the number he's texted me on with the word talk in his text. Hi Peter, looking forward to your show. Call me sceptical, but my immediate thought as to why the government is recalling Parliament tomorrow for the steel issue is to overshadow the grooming gangs row that is developing. Thanks, Bill from Carmarthen. Bill, just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, but I do think that this steel issue is a huge one, and recalling Parliament is not something that happens very often. In fact, I'm trying to remember exactly when it was that they recalled Parliament before. Yes, 18th of August. 2001, 18th of August 2001, to debate the situation in Afghanistan. So it's been 24 years nearly since that has happened. It's only been recalled 34 times at the weekend since 1948, basically the end of the war, 3 years or so in the other direction. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting thought. And you're absolutely right, Bill, there is a row about those gangs, and Janet in North Wales has given me a ring to discuss this. 0344 499 1000 is the number she has called. Janet, I understand you had your daughter had a very, very narrow escape from one of these gangs. Just talk us through what happened.
Peter, I spoke to you about this a few weeks back.
I remember that, Janet, and it was a very moving call, and I want you to tell us again, for people who perhaps weren't watching or listening at that point, what happened.
Okay, so I'm going to try and make this brief. I was in a domestic violence refuge, and there was a young girl who came in, what you would call a bit of a rough diamond, very, very young, and kind of kept away from us. But there were a lot of young children and teenage children in that refuge, and she befriended my daughter, and I, being very naive at the time, just thought, oh, poor girl, she's experiencing something awful. We then finally left after about 6 months. Unbeknown to me, she kept in contact with her, and one day I came home from work, I think she was about 14 at the time, she was missing, she'd gone. And
that must have been so incredibly worrying for you.
It wasn't worrying, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
It hits you in the gut. Mm-hmm. It is terrifying. And then I didn't have a car at the time. I had to walk 3 miles back to where we were at the refuge, purely because I thought she might have gone over there. And Peter, I'm not going to go into all the details again. Suffice to say, we spent 2 days and 2 nights looking for her. We went into places that were drug dens. We yeah, I walked into a flat and there was a lad comatose on the sofa with blood up the walls. And I bumped into 3 girls, a house with all the windows, and I showed them a photograph and they said, come in. And I went in, there was drug paraphernalia all over the place. And they went, oh my God, she was here this morning with a girl whose name I'm not going to mention for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And she said, she will take her to Glodick, and whatever you do, you've got to get her back, because she took me to Glodick and I was gang raped. And Glodick is a place near Oldham, and it is predominantly Pakistani, Muslim population. The women there do not speak English. Let's be clear about this. Until this happened to me, I was always one of those people who would defend this, who would say, don't be racist. But these communities do exist.
How did you get your daughter out of it, Janet?
We managed to contact a boy. She had a phone, but she didn't answer to us, because this girl had said, oh, she'd encouraged her. She was a young girl. Oh, your mum's really bad, I'll look after you. I've learnt since that, oh yes, Mum, she did take me to places where they were taking heroin, but she wouldn't let me have any. And that was initially, but now she's older, she goes, Mum, thank God you came and got me.
That was a narrow escape. And is your daughter thriving now? Has she got a good life?
Yeah, she's fine, and she's got children. And but we practically kidnapped her back. Yeah. We staked out.
And you know, there are so many people who, for lots of reasons, wouldn't have had as determined and as worried and as a fighter of a mum to go and get them. And
I don't know, you know, Peter. I think many were. I think I was lucky. I managed to contact a boy who contacted her and got her to meet him, and that is how we grabbed her back. But the point I was ringing for today, this with the government, with what they are doing, those places are tinder boxes. Those communities, there are white, working class, British people who have lived cheek to jowl with those communities and have felt for years that they've been made second class. And this might just provide a real spark in those problems, and that concerns me greatly.
I know exactly what you mean, Janet. And I think it's a big issue, and we really need to tackle it properly. Janet, thank you for speaking to me today. I really appreciate you ringing in again, and thank you for that. We're going to talk in just a second about the interview I did yesterday with the lawyer who is representing Hamas. Stay with us.
We are seeing more people put onto these boats as well, and that is because the demand is not abated at all. Yes, we might be making things slightly more difficult for the people smugglers, putting a bit of grit in the ointment, but we're not really doing anything to stem those flows. And that's why when the Labour Party came in and they decided to scrap all semblance of a deterrent, they really effectively bound themselves to a policy that is doomed to fail, because if you don't do anything that would persuade individuals looking to cross the channel that it's not worth their while and that they won't get asylum.
And here's why they think it is worth their while. They know they've got a very good chance of getting here, and once they're here, the odds are they're going to be allowed to stay.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to Tim in Harrogate, who says, when I was a kid, certain items were stamped with the logo Sheffield Steel. That way you knew you were buying the best steel products in the world. Sad to see our once great steel industry disappear. Sean says, he's in Bridlington, he says the British Steel renationalisation is only a delaying tactic. They are still going to destroy our industrial capability by replacing proper steel making with electric arch furnaces, says Sean. We will continue to talk about that story. In fact, we've got a member of the parliamentary committee that looks into these things coming on a little bit later on. And actually, just speaking of later in the show, it was about 6 o'clock yesterday that I did an interview with a barrister, a man called Frank McGuinness, and it was quite a controversial interview. I think it's fair to say. Lots of people have been in touch about it. I want to thank Margaret in Birmingham and Tracy, who've been in touch already about it, despite the fact we haven't even discussed it, and said nice things about my handling of the interview. You may disagree with that. And if you want to respond to this story, we only had sort of about 45 minutes left of the show yesterday, but if you've got a thought on it that was on the tip of your tongue yesterday, or maybe you didn't get through, or you didn't get on air, feel free to give us a ring today on 0344 499 1000. It's an interview that's an awful lot of people have responded to. I've had literally hundreds of messages on social media. I've had quite a few people writing comments on YouTube and various things. We're just going to remind you of a part of the interview. This is the barrister Frank McGuinness. He represents Hamas, and he and his legal firm have taken on a legal action in regard to Hamas, who are, of course, the terrorists who perpetrated the 7th of October attacks in Israel. And I asked him a number of questions about why he decided to represent them and so on. But we'll just get a little flavour of the interview that was about 6 o'clock yesterday on this station. You have told me that you have decided to represent Hamas. They are an unspeakably horrific and dreadful organisation.
Oh,
so yes, I am associating you with them because you've decided to represent them.
Okay, I think you might be hearing from the police. I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like you might. The low point on the Irish side of the Irish Sea is Pat Finucane, of course, right? A British MP stood up in Parliament and said he's just like his clients. Pat Finucane represented members of the Provisional IRA, which is another proscribed organisation. And 3 weeks later, Pat Finucane was, of course, murdered in front of his family by loyalist paramilitaries who we now know had handlers in the British establishment. So you're playing the same game. Don't talk over me.
Let's talk about Hamas. I'll talk over you if you want to. No, excuse me.
You're playing the same game. You put
I'm not playing any games. I'm not playing any games. You
just put a target on my back.
I'm not putting a target on anybody's back. I am asking you. No, I don't.
You owe me an apology.
No, I don't. I'm asking you why you've decided. Why have you decided to represent Hamas?
Next question.
Am I getting it clear, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you believe that Hamas have a right to use armed force to represent their position?
You keep asking me what I believe, which again is it's not quite as blatant and disgusting as your previous question. But
what's interesting is that Hamas said, well, I mean, you're representing these people and you've chosen to do so, so presumably it has something to do with what you believe.
Do you not understand how the legal system works?
Yes, I do, and I understand that you didn't have to take the case. If I were a lawyer and if someone came to me, I would say there's not in a million years would I represent Hamas. They are a disgusting, horrendous, anti-Semitic, dreadful terrorist organisation. That's what I would say. You didn't say that, and I'm very interested as to why.
because you're trying to make the story about me instead of this important application because you're not a serious journalist. Is that right?
Well, that was yesterday, and he accused me of many things, including making it about him. I will say that there are very few barristers who would actually come on media to talk about their case. He decided to do so. There was also a video, which you may have seen or may have seen online, of Mr. McGuinness and two other barristers submitting their action, submitting the paperwork, the 106-page document that they submitted to the Home Office, and it clearly showed all three of them, and it was about them submitting the documents. It didn't show any footage of Hamas or Hamas fighters or Hamas figures at all. It just showed them. So I slightly wondered why he decided to say that I was making it about him, especially as he decided to come on. But listen, the whole interview is online. It's on my Twitter. It's on YouTube. Lots of people have been responding to it. And it's been a very, very interesting 24 hours, I must say. Nicole Lambert is a journalist and who is across a lot of issues in the Middle East, including has written quite a lot about anti-Semitism in the UK as well. Nicole, thank you for joining us today. What did you make of the interview?
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me on, and well done. And I wondered if you have the police round yet for saying the Hamas...
Not so far. Listen, the day is yet young, Nicole. It's not even 4:30. Who knows? They may be on their way to arrest me for exercising free speech. And it's really interesting. I spoke to a barrister yesterday who I know, who said that is a criminal barrister, and said, there's so many people who are asked, so many barristers who are asked the question, how do you sleep at night? And that was the question that seemed to get under Mr. McGuinness's skin in regard to my asking him with Hamas how he slept at night. I've friends who are barristers, a couple of friends actually, one of who has represented some deeply, deeply unpleasant people at a very, very high level, some sort of headline making cases in this country. And I always say to her, actually, not quite how do you sleep at night, but do you ever worry about this? And she just says, look, it's the cab rank system with criminal cases. You take what you're given. But the point with Frank McGuinness is that he has chosen to take this action. He has chosen to represent Hamas. And really, all I wanted to get out of the interview, and I don't think I did actually, was why he decided to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you started the interview well simply by making sure that was the case, and it clearly was, because he said that he was doing it. And any kind of look at his social media shows that it's obviously part of his worldview is certainly a hatred, a kind of extremist hatred of Zionism. And one of the things that he posted on the quite soon after October 7 was something about this is the most hopeful images he'd seen, and these are images of Hamas militants coming into Israel. He's talked about victory to the Intifada. He's talked about his whole timeline on X is obsessed with Zionism. So, I mean, I wonder more, like, who else would employ this man personally?
And also, when that is when you make it very clear on your social media, and lots of people were sending me screenshots and various things of his Facebook, it'll shock you to learn that Frank McGuinness and I are not Facebook friends, but certainly people were sending me information, some of which I'd seen, some of which I hadn't seen before the interview, and I thought, it would be a very strange person who thought that Frank McGuinness didn't at least share, as you say, anti-Zionism, scepticism about Israel's actions and so on. And I wanted to get into that. I wanted to know, as Mark in Norfolk has actually just mentioned me, and he says what the Hamas lawyer didn't seem to understand is that the first question on your listeners' minds is what on earth would motivate a sane human being to represent a sordid, barbaric organisation like Hamas? And that's essentially what I wanted the answer to. My point would be, he's chosen to do an interview, he's chosen to take this legal action, he's chosen to take the case, he's chosen to put out a video of him and two of his colleagues at the Home Office building submitting this paperwork. He is at the centre of this story. There's no two ways about that, and I think it's a legitimate question, but he clearly didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the problems that they have with this legal action is that at the moment it's not legal to publicly support Hamas, to say you support Hamas. So that's what they want to change. They want to make it legal for people to go around and say, yes, I support terrorists, I support the actions of October 7 and the fact that there are 59 Israeli hostages, well, they deserve it. And that's that's what he and his ilk want to be able to say without having the police knocking on their doors. But because they are a prescribed terrorist organisation, both of their military and their political wing, then it means that he can't say that publicly, and so that's why I think he's in dangerous territory, and that's probably why he didn't answer your question in the way it should have been answered, which was presumably, yes, I support them, because he can't.
Listen, Nicole, it's very interesting talking to you. I just wonder if you think this will go anywhere. I mean, I can't see, I'd be surprised, very surprised, if Yvette Cooper does anything. It's essentially a submission to her to say de-prescribe Hamas, given everything that's happening at the moment, to say nothing of Hamas's horrendous record as a terrorist organisation. I mean, I just can't see this going anywhere. So I suppose the question one would ask is why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess perhaps before October 7, it might have been argued that they are not a terrorist organisation. Like, some people might have argued that. I, of course, wouldn't have. But after October 7 and the actions that they did, and this wasn't just, they didn't just start a war. They went to, and I've interviewed many of these people, they went to the house of civilians and they burned them alive. And they shot young children, and all the things that they did, and the fact that they're still holding 59 hostages shows that they are a terrorist organisation. So I imagine that she will turn it down, but with Labour the way it is, it's kind of hard to know, isn't it? You'd hope that they would do the right thing, but as we've seen over the last just this week, I'm not always sure that they will.
Nicole, thank you. That's Nicole Lampert, a journalist who follows these issues, and I appreciate her contribution. Mike has been in touch and says the lawyer who is representing Hamas is doing no more than what our legal system entitles him to do. Everyone, however, unpalatable is allowed representation. Everyone, however unpalatable, is allowed representation in our courts. Of course, you have to ask, why on earth would he take this case? Maybe money, maybe his sympathies. He was a little obnoxious. The sad thing is that he may find a sympathetic judge. The world is upside down, says Mike. Well, it hasn't come to a judge just yet. It's just with Yvette Cooper, and it's an action, I suppose, rather than a case. But thank you for that. Brittany has been in touch and says, from the United States, said, I saw part of the interview that you're now showing. I'm not going to lie, I was livid with that barrister. You held your cool very well. Thank you. So we'll continue to talk about this, certainly, and let me know what you think about it, because I've had a huge reaction online. I've tried to get back to as many people as I can, but to be honest, there's just been so many of them, and I really appreciate the support that many people have given me, and thank you for it. I should say that I would say about 90% supportive, about 10% not supportive, and that 10% not supportive sometimes fairly vocal. So there we are, a few things said, but that's life, and that's free speech as well. And Mr. McGuinness has free speech just as I do. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Jeremy Kyle is indeed back on Monday from 4 o'clock. I'm here today till 7. Then Kevin O'Sullivan will be with you in this studio between 7 and 9. And then what just happened between 9 and 10. So Kevin will be with you. I'm actually back tomorrow between 10 and 12:30. And during that show, we're going to dip into what Parliament is saying about the steel issue. This is something you want to talk about as well. And people are saying, Graham has been in touch with Bushy actually, and says if Parliament is being recalled tomorrow, maybe the MPs can also debate the bin strike in Birmingham. And Graham, we will be talking about that a little bit later in the programme. People are burning their own rubbish, and you know, all those toxic fumes and the plastic and the stuff that shouldn't really be burned at all. But of course, people are desperate and they just want the council in Birmingham to come and pick it up. It's one of the most basic things about government, and another basic thing about government is keeping the economy strong. And we know that in America, Wall Street has plunged after China has been hit with a 145% tariff. The S&P 500, one of the big indices, and NASDAQ fell by 6.3% and 7.2% respectively. If you're going off to America for your holiday, as I am actually later this year in November, well, you know, or maybe you're going to Disney or something like that. Well, actually, the pound is a little bit stronger against the dollar, but is that a good thing in terms of where things are globally? Well, let's talk to JD Dumbacher, who is a spokesman for Republicans Overseas UK. JD, thank you for joining me today. Where are we with this? Because Donald Trump has done well, certainly at the very least, he has paused and said that there's going to be a 90-day pause in these in a lot of these tariffs. But here in the UK, it was interesting because the White House said if you don't retaliate, if you don't do what China has done, well, you will be rewarded. But we still have those 10% tariffs on most things, and indeed 25% tariffs on things like cars. So I wonder if you think the special relationship is still special.
I think the special relationship is absolutely special. I think that you're going to get to a place in the UK where there is what's described as an extraordinary deal with the U.S. on trade. I think if you look at Canada and you look at Mexico, you see that they have a free trade agreement. And under that free trade agreement, the U.S. has said that automobiles, steel and aluminum are outside of that free trade agreement, that they are security. There are securities, national security reasons why they should be out and why those 25% tariffs apply. But everything else goes through that free trade agreement. And I think you could get to that place with the UK. I don't think there are too many other countries in the world that will get to that place. So I do think a special relationship will stand and will provide real dividends and benefits to the UK.
I was talking to a Canadian friend of mine the other day, and she says that antipathy towards America and President Trump, and let's remember Canada does about 70% of its trade with the United States, obviously that massive land border there, and she said that antipathy is so great that American goods are actually foodstuffs, are rotting in the shops. She says that she told me that people have started calling the black coffee not an Americano but a Canadicano. I just wonder if there will be a way back, you think, in regard to how America is viewed by at least some people under President Trump.
I mean, we saw that same type of antipathy among allies when there was the Iraq War. With
freedom fries.
And all of that. So I'm not surprised at that. They are in an election, right? And the parties are using this to show how tough they are against their neighbor. They are stoking internal resentment and division between the U.S. and Canada because of the politics. I think just like the freedom fries, it will pass. The long-term goals that the United States has here are very important to the U.S. They're very important to the Western world. And there will be some pain both in relationships with allies, but in terms of stock markets in the short term, maybe even the medium term. But the goals are important. And in the end, the U.S. government is trying to make it a better place in the long run for my children, for your children, for everybody's children. And I think we need to take a little bit of short-term pain, unfortunately, to get to a better place, because right now we're on a slow road to a very bad place in the global order.
Does President Trump care about any country other than America? I know he says America first, and I get that, and that's what a president should do, should put his own country first. I get that. But does he really care about other countries?
Well, I would say absolutely, but he's not going to care about any country more than America, as you just pointed out. And it's going to negotiate in the interest of the U.S. taking into account that there will be a better negotiating stance with the friends than the foes. And that goes both in terms of friends from a national security perspective, but also from a trade perspective. I think the UK is taking the absolute right approach in not trying to escalate the trade war, but coming to the table and saying, okay, let's figure out what your goals are in the United States and what ours are, and figure out a resolution to this issue. China, I think, did take the wrong approach. I think the EU took the wrong approach. The EU only has a 90-day window where it's subject to the 10% tariff rates, and then it goes back up to that reciprocal 20% rate that was originally announced. China is the real target here. They've stolen IP. They have been a country that has not abided by any of the rules of the WTO. They didn't even abide by the rules in 2020 that were negotiated between the Trump administration and China over that trade war. So at the end of the day, I think taking the pedal off the gas on the tariffs with this 90-day hold is both a reaction to the markets, of course, but it's also a reaction to the reality that there is going to be a real trade fight here with China, and that's the most important thing on the table.
Okay, JD, thank you. That's JD Dunbacker there. He is spokesman for Republicans Overseas UKs. What do you think about what he's been saying about anything we've been talking about in the last 45 minutes or so? 0344 499 1000. Nice words from Dorothy. I'm going to be careful not to read out too many sort of congratulation-y kind of messages, if that's all right, but I'll read the other part of your message. When Dorothy says, I would think if this barrister is representing Hamas, he will be putting forward a favourable view of them. Then why is he so horrified as to anyone suggesting he is a supporter of Hamas? Hamas are evil terrorists. End of story, says Dorothy in East Kilbride. Stuart says, I fell asleep before your interview yesterday. Not a reflection on you, but I have MS fatigue, so I watched it on YouTube this morning. I couldn't believe what a nasty piece of work the lawyer is, says Stuart. If you aren't a serious journalist, Peter, then all I can say is we need a whole lot more non-serious journalists, as you handled the entire interview very well. I wonder if he'll lick his wounds and come back for round two. Well, I'm very happy to speak to Frank McGuinness again at any stage that he likes. Stuart, I'm sorry to hear about your MS. My best friend has MS. My aunt has MS. I had an aunt who had MS. I was on the council for the MS Society in Northern Ireland for 2 years. I raised a little bit of money for them as well. I know a little bit about MS because of all those other people around me and in my family, including my best friend who's doing a brilliant job at the moment dealing with it. And I just want to say it's a horrible thing, and I know the fatigue can be very, very difficult. And thank you for listening to the show. Thanks for going back to YouTube. I appreciate it, and I wish you well, because I know you can have good days and bad days. Certainly in the case of my friend and my relatives, certainly there's sometimes things are fine. The treatments are coming on leaps and bounds, and I hope that you're getting the best medical attention that you can as you deal with the much misunderstood multiple sclerosis. We're going to take some of your calls next. If you want to add your voice to those, 0344 499 1000.
we are seeing more people put onto these boats as well, and that is because the demand has not abated at all. Yes, we might be making things slightly more difficult for the people smugglers, putting a bit of grit in the ointment, but we're not really doing anything to stem those flows, and that's why when the Labour Party came in and they decided to scrap all semblance of a deterrent, they really effectively bound themselves to a policy that is doomed to fail, because if you don't do anything that would persuade individuals looking to cross the channel that it's not worth their while and that they won't get asylum.
And here's why they think it is worth their while. They know they've got a very good chance of getting here, and once they're here, the odds are they're going to be allowed to stay.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Nick, who is our first voice note of the day.
I have just seen your interaction with that vile lawyer, and I have to say, you have been elevated into the top tier of political journalists and interviewers. You have become one of the heroes of journalism and political interviewing, and there are very few of those since 2020. I applaud you, Peter. Absolutely well done. And I look forward to seeing you over the weekend.
Nick, that's very, very kind of you. Abdul's given me a ring from Birmingham on 0344 499 1000. Abdul, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Peter, thank you very much for having me on.
No problem.
I'm a fan of Talk Radio, always listening to the every day almost, and I've been listening to since this morning.
Okay.
And lately I've noticed, Peter, that you are criticizing this lawyer for actually representing the Hamas group.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of Hamas group's activities, but what I want you also to mention, the atrocities and the genocide Israel is carrying out against...
It's not a genocide, Abdul. It's not a genocide.
Please.
It's not.
Please.
It's not.
Yeah. I mean, look at them. Look, 46,000 people have been killed by them.
Those figures are from Hamas, and they're not verified. It's not a genocide.
No,
and
you're not going to acknowledge, but it's worse than genocide.
Look, they've killed many people. There's no doubt about that. This is a war, and it was started by Hamas.
46,000. Come on, man.
Well, that's a Hamas figure.
You got to be fair.
Abdul, I am being fair, and I'm telling you that is a Hamas figure that hasn't been verified. I'm a journalist. I wouldn't trust something on Wikipedia. I'm not going to trust a terrorist organisation. What I do know is that Hamas have definitely killed many Israelis, and I know that the Israeli army has killed.
Israelis, they may
okay, well, it doesn't matter how many people are. The numbers are high. I get that. I think we can agree on that. I don't want it to happen, but the way it can stop instantly, today, this moment, is if Hamas gives back 59 hostages that they're holding.
I understand. I'm not supporting Hamas.
I know you're not.
For their activities.
Yeah.
But I want you also to mention and highlight what Israelis are doing to the Palestinians.
Okay. Well, we've done that, Abdul. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul. We've done that. We've talked about that. And certainly, look, I don't like what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians. I don't like it either. I don't like the fact that they're deaths. I'm not going to shed a single tear for Hamas terrorists who die. They have made their own bed. If they're killed by the Israeli army, that's fair enough. That's the way things are. What I do worry about, and I think Abdul does as well, are the innocent people, the women and children, the men as well, who stood up to Hamas, not just the people who stood up, but the people who are living in fear of Hamas as well. There were 4 people who were abducted, murdered. The bodies were put back, in some cases, on the doorsteps of their families because they dared stand up to Hamas. There are certainly some Palestinians who are trying to do that. There are many more who are living in fear. There are some who are totally innocent. And there are many who are supporting Hamas, and Hamas themselves have 59 hostages, and they should give them back, and then the war could end. And then we could start talking about what peace actually looks like in the Middle East, which I would love to be a proper conversation for everyone's sake. Joan is in Sunderland and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Joan, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello,
Peter. I would like to join with other people and say thank you very much for the way you handled the interview last night with that lawyer.
Well, thank you, Joan. It wasn't the easiest interview in my career, but it was certainly one that was worth doing, I think. And I suppose the question I still don't really have an answer to, and maybe you do, Joan, is really about why this is happening and why this action anyway, why that Frank McGuinness and his legal firm have decided to take this action. Because I did ask on a number of occasions, can you explain the case? And he just kept telling people to read 106 pages, which I just don't think they're going to do.
Well, what I think is the trying to push for the label terrorist to be removed. Because if you remember, it wasn't long ago that I believe it was a judge who said that the Palestinians or the people from Gaza should be treated the same as the people we allowed into the country from Ukraine.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right, yeah.
And if they get the label terrorist removed, there is absolutely no reason that we should be not accepting them. And quite honestly, I am so fed up. We might as well get into small boats and disappear. But the main thing is, if Hamas is not a terrorist organization, why has Egypt, Jordan, and all the Arab countries closed their borders to them?
I also find it very interesting, Joan, that there are nations like Ireland, which I think is probably the most anti-Semitic country in Western Europe, that say they really support the Palestinians, but when it comes to saying take some Palestinian people, people they would call refugees, they say no. I find that very interesting.
Well, as I say, there's not one, for the simple reason, if Hamas is not a terrorist organization, they do not want their populations infected with this ideology, or whatever you want to call it, and they do not want to see their countries reduced to rubble, for the simple reason that these people, the same as the Ceausescus and the Enver Hoxhas, they get hold of a population, and it's only when the population has the strength to fight back.
Yeah, and that's something I just don't think that the innocent people in the Palestinian territories, and certainly in Gaza, have at the moment. Joan, you make some really good points, and thank you for them. Neil says everyone who supports Hamas who doesn't support Hamas always has a but. And the question that riled that barrister, which surprise, he did not answer, which is why the hostages have not been released. He instantly went on the attack, saying you're a two-bit journalist and misinformed. Who is paying these massive costs, says Neil, in what he says is Labour-obliterated Wales. Let's talk about steel now, with some calls and messages, because the steel question is a very, very big one. Jay has sent me a voice note on this. Let's hear from Jay.
As much as we don't want taxes to go up and things like that, which, none of us do because we're suffering at the moment, we're being hammered. If it meant keeping British Steel to secure them 3,500 jobs for the people at Scunthorpe, I live in Suffolk, but I'd be more than happy if another £15 or £20 a month come out of my NI or out of my tax. If everyone did that, that would put a lot of money towards it. I'm sure the government could cancel some overseas aid that they don't need to send somewhere and spend it on that and buy it back from these Chinese owners and have it as British Steel.
Jay, I think you make some good points. People are really hurting with the amount of tax that they're paying at the moment, and I really think that people shouldn't be taxed anymore. I think the pips are squeaking on that, but there are plenty of places where we can save money, and if the government's going to find the money, then we should allow that to happen. Andrew is in Hertfordshire and wants to talk to us about steel. Andrew, you're very welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon. You're doing a cracking job. Well done, you. Following on from yesterday, it's funny, isn't it? The Israelis are fighting to free Palestinians who fought back against Hamas, and they got killed and dropped outside their families' houses. That's a splendid irony there, isn't it? In relation to British Steel, it's very straightforward. Starmer, showboating, not going to add any value, recalls Parliament. All those people that are up in Sheffield and around Scunthorpe that have struggled, do you know, every single one of those would say, do you know what, our cause is not that important. It's not of that much value. Could you take the time and debate about those young girls and the grooming gangs?
Well, it's a very good point, Andrew, and I do think that Parliament's being recalled tomorrow. In fact, the Prime Minister has been speaking, and he says he's going to pass a law to give the government power to secure the future of steelmaking at British Steel's Scunthorpe plant. They're going to pass it in one day. Apparently, they're going to act with urgency. But yes, there are other things that, as you correctly say, that people want to be debated in Parliament in much greater depth than this government is doing, Andrew.
100%. I get it. Look how he acts when he wants to do something that's not going to add any value. He can't change it. The stark reality of the steel is brutal, but he can't save the job. So it's actually a fuss about nothing. But he could do something to stop a girl being put in a cab tomorrow morning. And then you listened to that woman earlier.
I did, and listen, we've actually put that out on social media because Janet spoke so incredibly clearly and articulately and in such a heartfelt way. Andrew, we hear smash the gangs. That is what Keir Starmer says all the time about the border situation. I want him to do that. I wish him well in that. But what about smashing the grooming gangs? That to me is an even greater priority, or at least a similar priority, Andrew.
100%. And on the edge of your desk there, take that glass of water that you've got, hold it above the ground and drop it. Smashing something is instant. We were all hoodwinked and deceived by a lawyer who used a word, smashed, hugely powerful. It actually means nothing.
Andrew, literally when you said take that glass of water on the desk and hold it up and drop it to the floor and watch it smash, my producer said in my ear, don't do that, Peter. Health and safety. Yeah, it's health and safety gone mad, and this is not a country I want to live in. Andrew, listen, thanks for your thoughts there. I really appreciate that. Thank you to Mick, who says, I have friends living across the world. They all believe the UK is now a nation of mugs, fools and cowards. They all believe our culture and country will be destroyed. And thanks to Stuart, who says, Hamas want the legal action for free speech, but there's no free speech in Gaza without torture and death. I also want to know why they're using human rights legislation. What about the human rights of the people who died on the 7th of October? Lots more to discuss here on Talk. Want your views too in the next hour. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you for your company. The future of British steel hangs in the balance, and our economic and national security are all on the line. That is what Sir Keir Starmer has been saying in the last few minutes. We'll bring you that full statement in a few minutes and reflect on what he has been saying. Also, brazen thieves filming stripping Greggs' shelves bare across broken Britain with staff powerless to stop. Also, a police force accused of anti-white bias. That's West Midlands Police. They have been told that it is a fair recruitment. That's what the Home Secretary says, whereas the Shadow Home Secretary says the policy is absolutely disgraceful. Sorry, it's West Yorkshire Police rather than West Midlands. Apologies for that. Lots of people getting in touch as well about British Steel. What is going to happen to those workers? Parliament is coming back tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about it now over the next couple of hours, and tomorrow morning on my programme between 10 and 12:30. Loads to discuss as well in regard to that interview with the lawyer yesterday. We played a little bit more out on that. That's a man who has decided, for reasons which remain unclear, to represent Hamas. We're talking about gangs as well. We're talking about tariffs. We're talking about lots of things. Let us know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You know me. As often as possible, I get callers on. I love speaking to guests like Peter Blexley, we're going to talk to in a second, but more than that, I love talking to you. So pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter, or you can pick up your phone again and use it for different things. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, to that main number. You can send me a WhatsApp text message to the main number, or you can give me a ring on the main number, 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss. Let's get going here on Talk Drive. Betty's been in touch and says British Steel was destroyed by unions and Labour decades ago. It's a dead duck if UK unions are involved. It should be retained, but unions need to be removed and ships ordered, says Betty. Well, it's really interesting. The GMB union, who we're speaking to later on, have united with no one other than Nigel Farage, who says that British Steel should be nationalised. So it's a very, very interesting thought on that. Also, Keir Starmer says quicker and faster, needs to resign, and all the front bench with him. We need a general election to get this country back, says a texter. But I want to talk now, and we will talk about that as time goes on. I want to talk about the brazen thieves filmed stripping Greggs' shelves bare. We're going to, for the vast majority of people are listening on the radio, but quite a number of people as well are watching this programme. You can do that, of course, on YouTube or your connected device, whether it's a smart TV or whatever it is, and switch it on. So, and you can see what's happening. I'm just going to describe to the people listening on the radio, maybe the car dwellers who are heading home, what has happened in these Greggs restaurants, takeaways anyway. People just grab the stuff, they just walk out the door, they don't pay for it. There's security guards who sometimes challenge them or try to in some way stop them. Well, that just doesn't happen. There are loads and loads of people who are doing this. They put bouncers in some of the doors. In one incident, when a shoplifter was confronted, he simply gave the worker a fist bump and handed back some of the food he had pilfered before strolling out. And this footage of people just nabbing stuff, just nicking stuff. A guy said, "I'm homeless, sorry, I'm nicking it." There are so many different shoplifting incidents. It's not just food at places like Greggs, as covered in this Sun exclusive story, but also overall the shoplifting epidemic, with a record 55,000 incidents a day. There's footage on the screen right now of Stockwell in South London, and this person's just stealing the stuff. Actually, he's the one who's handing it back and fist bumping the worker, the baffled worker, trying to steal things, and then just walking. There's another person just literally lifts it up, just walks out of the shop as brazen as they can. Now, Labour says you've promised to make assaulting a retail worker an offence. I mean, it should be an offence anyway because it's assault, and treat more seriously the theft of goods worth less than £200. Let's speak to Peter Blexley. He's our crime commentator. He's a former Metropolitan Police detective. He's an author. He's a speaker. Peter, this is just out of control.
Welcome to Lawless Britain 2025, where the streets have been surrendered to the criminals, and they were many years ago, and thieves act with utter impunity. They walk in, not only to Greggs, and fair play to the Sun newspaper for highlighting this epidemic, but they go almost wherever they like, into shops, help themselves, walk out. So many of the shops do not have a non-intervention policy, so staff don't get involved. And this is what we've got, anarchy on the streets.
It is total anarchy. And some of the people as well just don't seem to realise it is wrong. There are so many people who, they're challenged and they just, oh, sorry, yeah, I'm just going to give it back. Or the guy fist bumps the worker and says, oh, yeah, I'll just put it back. There are some people who are incredibly brazen, but also some who just very straightforwardly don't seem to know that you need to pay for things and don't seem to know the difference between right and wrong, or even worse, they know it and don't care.
They know fully well what they're doing. They're thieves, they're vermin, they're scum. They're the dregs of society that think they can just go into a shop and help themselves. Hugely damaging to the economy, massively damaging to these shops that are affected by it. But the even bigger damage is to society as a whole. Because when these people act in the brazen manner that they do, prices go up for the rest of us. We all end up paying a bit more, those of us who actually do part with our money when we go into a shop. And of course, it just adds to this increasing sense of lawlessness, which is plaguing Britain. We have police services that will say they're effective, but largely they're not, because there is so much crime and so many criminals, which is clear by the fact that our prisons are bursting at the seams, that this lawlessness is just going to continue and things are simply going to get worse and not better.
Peter, you, of course, have quite a lot of white privilege. I have white privilege as well, apparently. That says that white people have an inherent advantage on the basis of their race in a society characterised by inequality and injustice. And I'm sure you'll be delighted, as I am, to learn the Thames Valley Police has introduced equity training, covering topics including white privilege, microaggressions, don't stare at someone for too long, it's a microaggression, and the difference between being non-racist versus anti-racist. This is a police force that had a detective inspector post, so quite a senior post within its CID. It was not advertised. It went without advertisement, without proper process, to an Asian sergeant, despite the force having been warned about the legal risks of not holding a competitive process. But apparently, white people are the racists.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager growing up in a flat with my single mum, I felt really privileged, I really did, when we used to have baked beans every Wednesday because child allowance didn't land in my mum's purse until a Thursday. Yeah, stacked with white privilege all my life. Actually, some of this is beginning to unravel and backfire on these lunatic police services and their positive discrimination. Oh, sorry, they'll call it positive action. Because what's happening is people from minorities are getting promoted into roles that they're simply not suited for, might not have the experience, have not had the correct training, and consequently they're finding that they are fish out of water when they're in these roles and they're not performing as they should do, and colleagues are looking at them thinking, well, what's going on here? So if this continues apace, and I see no halting it, because these DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion lunatics that have got such a grip on the British police seem absolutely determined to keep this kind of nonsense going. It'll be very interesting to see how it all unravels.
You're absolutely right, Peter. I also wonder what you make of Yvette Cooper's comments, because we're not just talking about Thames Valley, we're now talking about West Yorkshire Police. They had put a temporary block on hiring white British candidates. She says West Yorkshire Police was complying with fair recruitment standards. Chris Philp, who's the Shadow Home Secretary for the Conservatives, said the policy was disgraceful. People should be treated equally and given equal opportunities. Crazy idea there, Chris. To reject or delay applications just because of someone's skin colour is morally wrong. I mean, fair for Chris Philp to say that, but surely it's just a statement of the bleeding obvious.
Yvette Cooper, the Labour Party Home Secretary. The Labour Party are utterly indebted to their Muslim friends because, of course, they are elected in areas where there is a huge brown-faced Muslim vote. And the Labour Party has many of those MPs in its numbers. They are dreadfully scared of losing those votes to independent candidates, like they did with some independents being elected at the last election, campaigning, believe it or not, on the Gaza platform.
That's right. Yeah, Jonathan Ashworth, who was going to be a cabinet minister, he lost his seat because of them. There are four of them, four of those candidates, and they've come together in an independent group with, guess who, Jeremy Corbyn as well.
Indeed. So as part of the Labour wokerati, that dangerous lunatic left-wing kind of part of what is now the government, they're determined to push these kind of policies. They support all these policies because it supports those people who vote for them in areas that have sizable black and brown-faced populations. So they are, of course, going to support all this. They're never going to stand up and say, look, this is discriminatory, which it is. And, of course, police forces have already been taken to court and have had findings ruled against them for discriminating against white candidates. I think there are certain people in this country that will not be happy until they've stripped Great Britain of its culture, of its customs, of its beliefs, and they've turned it into some kind of slum.
Peter, thank you. That's Peter Blexley, former Metropolitan Police detective. Lots of reaction to this. Leslie says, why do stores employ security staff when they just stand by and watch the thefts? And quite a number of people have rung about this, including Grace in London. Let's go to Grace now and ask her what she thinks. Grace, thanks for the call, 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say?
Various things. I mean, I don't eat in Greggs or Press or any of the places that have been mentioned because they're so overpriced I couldn't afford to, and I'm very conscious that there are people in our world who are literally starving, and you could provide many meals for the cost of something in Greggs. So I don't go to those places myself. So maybe I'm ignorant about this, but I wonder why you can't use ankle tags. Obviously, there's not space in prisons for everyone who's nicking stuff.
Well, the thing is, you've got to catch the people first, and you've got to go through a process and convict them. And the thing is that the police just aren't dealing with this. Ankle tags are a great idea, Grace, and I think they should be used. I totally agree with you that they should be used, but the policing just isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, clearly some police forces are not managing their time and resources very well, but I don't want to be harsh on all of the police because I think that some of them are doing a great job and
agree with you, yeah,
really valiantly trying to support the country. But I'm interested by how words like our country's beliefs and what's right or wrong have come up in this discussion, because I think that's a big part of the problem. I think some people want to presume that our country is changing and degenerating because of increasing diversity or because of migration, and I don't think that's necessarily the fundamental issue. I think one of the things that's changed that's not often talked about is that for quite a long time in this country we had a bit of a worldview that was shaped by the idea that God gave us laws such as do not steal, and Jesus taught us we should love our neighbour and be self-sacrificial and care about others. And now we've kind of lost, I mean, a lot of people weren't believing in God anyway, but to some extent they had those values inculcated because they shaped our culture for such a long time. But I feel like the loss of that and the replacement with messaging that we're given as young children, that we should get what we want, that we should strive for what we want, we should have our way. That's the kind of the new morality that we have, instead of the idea of caring for others and being self-sacrificial.
Grace, I think you make a really good point there. I am not a Christian, but there are people very close to me who have very strong Christian faiths, and I know that the sort of Judeo-Christian beliefs that this country is based on, or should be based on, or was originally based on, are so incredibly important, and what right from wrong is, and also, as you say, self-sacrifice and realising that it's not all about you. There are so few people who actually get that these days, I think, Grace.
Yeah, I feel like that might be at the root of some of the things that we're seeing changing. And I'm not suggesting, of course, that non-Christians can't behave brilliantly.
Of course, absolutely, yeah. No, I know you're not.
I think some people might not realise that that's part of where some of our society's worldviews came from, because, I mean, back in ancient Roman times, people thought it was fine to exploit others. There's an episode of Horrible Histories where they talk about how children in Sparta were taught that it was fine to steal so long as you didn't get caught. But our worldview and the idea we should be honest, the idea that we should be caring for the vulnerable rather than just going with survival of the fittest, some of those things were shaped, largely by Jesus' teaching spreading around our country. And because we're now really losing that, I think we're seeing more selfishness. And we've also got advertising and other things encouraging us to put ourselves first.
Yeah, you're right, Grace. I just think you're speaking so much sense. I just want to leave you with one thought, Grace. And this is. I mean, you've spoken so much sense. But will you please do me a favour and consider having a Greggs sausage roll? You can get one for about $1.50, and honestly, you will not regret it. It is a wonderful bit of ketchup. It is a wonderful thing.
I'll consider it.
Okay, good stuff. As long as you don't shoplift it, which I'm sure you won't. Grace is in London. Thank you very much indeed for that. Well, in the last few minutes, Sir Keir Starmer has made a statement about why Parliament is being recalled tomorrow morning. On my show between 10 and 12:30 tomorrow, we're going to talk about Parliament. We're going to dip into the proceedings there. We're going to see what's happening, whether British Steel can actually be rescued in Scunthorpe. And Keir Starmer, as I said in the last few minutes, talking about why Parliament has been recalled, very rare thing to happen on a Saturday, to discuss British Steel. This is what he said.
Good afternoon. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest to protect British jobs and British workers. This afternoon, the future of British Steel hangs in the balance. Jobs, investment, growth. Our economic and national security are all on the line. I've been to Scunthorpe. I met the steel workers. I know how important steel is, not just to the region, but to the whole country. It's part of our national story, part of the pride and heritage of this nation. And I'll tell you this, it is essential for our future. Our plan for change means we need more steel, not less. So we will act with urgency. Now, we should be clear, this situation and our response is unique. While it is true that we're facing a new era of global instability, our concerns about this plant and negotiations to protect it have been running for years. This moment could have happened at any time, but it has happened now, and I will not stand by. There is no time to waste. So we are recalling Parliament tomorrow for a Saturday sitting. We will pass emergency legislation in one day to give the Business Secretary the powers to do everything possible to stop the closure of these blast furnaces. And as I have said, we will keep all options on the table. Our future is in our hands. This government will not sit back and just hope. We will act to secure Britain's future with British steel, made in Britain, in the national interest.
Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister there. Well, we'll be talking about that as the programme goes on. Let me know your thoughts on Parliament being recalled, 0344 499 1000. But later on, we're going to be speaking to one of the unions involved, the GMB, their National Officer for Steel, about her resolve to fix this crisis. We're going to talk in a second as well, just after the break, about Birmingham, because residents have resorted to burning their rubbish. I don't blame them, but that's not something that is particularly safe or desirable. Why can't they just get this sorted out? We'll talk about that in just a second here on Talk.
the government are not focusing at all on providing that reassurance to our many family businesses, hard-working businesses that keep our local economies going in places like Keighley, where I represent. It is deeply frustrating. Business confidence is at an all-time low. Indeed, I was with one of my manufacturing businesses, a mighty business in Keighley, just yesterday, but yet the narrative that they were communicating to me is they are deeply concerned about the additional overheads that is being put on them by the government's choices.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Amy, who is our technical operator today, she actually used to work in Greggs. I finally respect you, Amy. So well done you. No accent though, she's a brilliant technical operator, I'm joking. And yeah, I must say, is your staff discount still valid, Amy? Apparently it's not, she's telling me in my ear. Very disappointing. Mark in Norwich says, Starmer obviously doesn't give two hoots about all the shoplifting from Greggs, but I was wondering if all of the shoplifters had been wearing t-shirts saying I love the far right on them. Do you think Starmer's response might be slightly more robust? Leslie says, if Starmer hadn't been swanning around Europe and the EU, he wouldn't need to be rushing to rescue Scunthorpe tomorrow. Mick says, Reeves being overjoyed about 0.5% growth in GDP is like a chief constable celebrating one burglary being solved. Both are negligible, says Mick. Yep, they're just not going to get the kind of growth they want. They bet the farm on 2.5% growth. It's not going to happen. Andy in Hampshire says, great show as usual. Why are we still moaning about tariffs? I'm a retired firefighter used to kicking in doors. I only dabbled in the markets for the last 5 years, but I know markets go up and they go down. So why haven't the professionals acted accordingly? They are the experts, or have they just thought the governments would bail us out again as in 2008? Well, thank you for that, Andy. And Andy, you might actually be useful, or your previous colleagues might be useful in Birmingham at the moment, because a load of people are burning their rubbish. The bin strike chaos is spiralling. It's spiralling into a fire risk, and there are all sorts of issues. The tempers are fraying as well, because furious residents are shouting at neighbours about dumping rubbish in the streets. Things are pretty bad. And Richard Parkin is with us now. He's a Conservative councillor in Birmingham at the Sutton Redicap area. Richard, thank you for joining me today. What's the picture where you are?
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, the weather's glorious outside. It's 21 degrees, hottest day of the year. But unfortunately, here in Birmingham, we're not only sweltering, but surrounded by 21,000 tonnes of rubbish that's lying on our streets.
Must be quite a stench.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Now the weather's improved. I mean, this strike is now into its 5th week, all-out strike, but we have been suffering intermittent strikes since the beginning of the year. So we're now in April and it's still going on. And tempers are fraying, and residents are not only angry with the council, but also a lot of people are taking the opportunity to dump fly tipping and other rubbish. Yeah. So it's adding to the problem. And just looking at those images there, if you drive around parts of Birmingham, you will be amazed just how bad things have got.
And people burning things, I mean, that's very dangerous, isn't it? Because you might not realise actually what you're burning, and there are certain plastics and things like that that can be toxic fumes, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally heard of anybody burning rubbish, but I know of the councillors who have come across it. Obviously, it's not illegal to have a bonfire in your back garden, but there are nuisance issues related to that. So it depends on the type of rubbish you're burning.
It's the health issue I'm most worried about, I must say, yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, as the weather's getting hotter, residents are complaining their asthma has got made worse because of the amount of rubbish lying on the streets. Children can't go out to play. Mobs of people are descending on mobile waste trucks every time one turns up because they haven't had bin collections for so long. There's piles of rubbish at the bottom of tower blocks, which poses a fire risk. And pavements are being blocked, so residents are struggling to get past in mobility scooters and prams and so on. And you just wouldn't believe it. This is Britain's second city, and the scenes are absolutely appalling. And I've lived here pretty much all my life. I've never seen anything like this.
West Midlands Fire Service has issued an urgent warning, says our ask of residents is simple, please avoid burning waste. Fire chiefs say the bin crisis is creating a perfect storm for disaster. People are burning things like creating toxic fumes, exploding batteries and out of control fires as well. I wonder, Richard, what on earth is the way out of this? Because, you know, Angela Rayner's turned up. I'm sure that meant you just immediately thought, right, this is going to be sorted in 5 minutes. But, I mean, on a more serious note, how on earth is Birmingham going to get back to, quite literally, civilization?
It's going to be a massive clean-up, Peter. I mean, there's so many issues here. Firstly, if and when it is cleaned up, there's been a massive increase in the rat population of Birmingham. So we're going to be facing problems with rats, in bigger rats and in more numbers coming back to the neighbourhoods where the waste was previously rotting, which they're used to coming to. We have also got a situation where Birmingham is a second city as its international reputation has been severely hit. There's headlines about what's going on here in Birmingham, not just around the country, but around the world. And at a time of global economic uncertainty, it's just about the worst image, that Birmingham could have.
You're right. I mean, I would not be rushing to see something at the Bull Ring because of what's going on. I just think it's a terrible thing, and people will remember it. They'll say, "Oh yeah, Birmingham, that place where all the bins were, the rubbish was piling up." I mean, that is not the image you want of Birmingham, is it?
Not at all. And there's been a lot of great work over the past few years carried out by the former West Midlands Mayor Andy Street and others in promoting the brand of Birmingham. And that's going to take some time to recover. But what we've been calling for as a Conservative group is a public health emergency to be declared here in the city. We've reached that point now. And I think even politicians, national politicians, Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner have acknowledged that there is a looming public health crisis here. So we are calling for a public emergency, and unfortunately the Labour Council have voted down our motion this week to enact that very emergency and start cleaning up the city. So it's immensely frustrating as well as extremely annoying to residents about what's going on.
Richard, thanks for your thoughts there. Richard Parkin there, he's a Conservative councillor in Birmingham, Sutton Redicap. Lots of people getting in touch about this, including Helen in Watford. She's given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Helen, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there, thank you. I just wanted to stress how toxic it is when people burn plastics.
You're absolutely right, it's really dangerous.
But even burning wood, it could be soaked in kerosene or preservative. That goes up into the atmosphere and it comes back down, and we will be breathing it all over the country. People chuck things on fires. I mean, even if they're burning their chemical bottles that help household bleach.
Yes, the bleach and things like that, and different chemical products you might clean with.
It's unbelievably toxic. People have no idea because it's microplastics and they go up into the atmosphere. People really need to know.
But can you blame them, Helen? Because I would try not to do that. But if I was in that situation and I just thought, look, you know, all this rubbish is piling up. It's a massive problem. It's a logistical problem. It's a health problem. You're worried about these rats coming. You're worried about your kids. What are people meant to do, Helen?
But they're poisoning themselves. They don't realise because they'll be breathing it in as well. If you're right by a fire, you'll be the first to breathe it in.
Yeah.
So it's man poisoning man. It's so silly.
What do you think this says, Helen? What do you think this says about our country, that we have? You know, I'm sure people in Manchester might not be too happy with me saying this, but our second city, Birmingham, which is just has so much rubbish piling up. People are falling out with one another, falling over the rubbish, falling over themselves to get rid of the rubbish by burning it or by fly tipping it or whatever. What do you think this says about us as a society, Helen? Because it's not good, is it?
The whole state of our country just shows humanity's got a very low consciousness level at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, we're absolutely flabbergasted how idiotic, how stupid the things that are going on, how far we've fallen. We're not going forward, we're going backwards as a civilization.
Helen, thanks for your thoughts. Wise words, sad words, but wise words from Helen in Watford there. You want to get your voice on the air like Helen? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can also send me a voice note via WhatsApp on that number. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. In fact, what I'm going to do in the break we're about to take is have a look at my Twitter and read out some of those messages in just a minute. We'll take some more calls as well. Lots to discuss here on Talk. We'll have a sports update very soon too. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch. Really appreciate everybody who has been commenting on that interview I did with Frank McGuinness, the lawyer. And actually, there's been a bit of a development that someone's just sent me, and thank you to the person who did. In the Jewish Chronicle is reporting, this is an article by Lauren Bell-Cross, who used to work here actually, and Jacob Jaffa. This is in the Jewish Chronicle, and they have interviewed the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. And David Lammy has confirmed that Hamas's designation as a terrorist organisation is simply not for changing, as he puts it. This is in regard to the legal action, the challenge that Frank McGuinness and his firm of barristers has put forward. Now, once the application is officially received, the Home Office has 90 days to issue a response. But the Jewish Chronicle is reporting that it says the Foreign Office and the Home Office are as one. And David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has told the Jewish Chronicle, our position is simply not for changing. Hamas, which committed a barbaric terrorist attack on the 7th of October, has long been designated a terrorist organisation in the UK. It continues to hold dozens of hostages and all the while endangers civilians by embedding itself amongst the civilian infrastructure. These are acts of despicable cruelty that show Hamas's barbaric nature. It's not often I say this, but well done, David Lammy. Thanks to everybody who's been in touch about all sorts of things, including steel. Graham says Starmer won't want the Commons to sit for too long tomorrow. It's just coming back from 11 o'clock. MPs are coming back from their Easter holidays to take part in a debate, indeed passing legislation in Parliament, because British steel hangs in the balance. That's what the Prime Minister has been saying. And Graham and Bushy says Starmer won't want the Commons to sit for too long tomorrow as Arsenal are playing at home with a 5:30 kick-off, and he doesn't want to miss out sitting in the director's box. Well, we don't know if he's going to that match, but Graham, I think, not for the first time, perhaps has his tongue in his cheek. Mark says, sadly, I remember the last time there was a bin strike. Labour were in charge then too. Also, why hasn't Starmer called for emergency legislation to force the bin men back to work? Trevor's been in touch as well and says, why is Starmer considering saving British steel but had no problem letting Port Talbot close its blast furnaces? Oh, and Labour denied permission for the coal mine to supply the furnaces. Well, plenty of people slagging off Keir Starmer on that one, let me tell you. On steel, John's been in touch from Cornwall. John, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Well, it's 2 points, really. There's 2 things on the news. There was this thing about the Scunthorpe and the money that's needed, where someone said 500 million. And there's also the thing about the commitment to Ukraine of 450 million. And I asked the question, where does the government think it's going to find £1 billion? And yet it couldn't find money for winter fuel allowance for elderly people who worked hard over their lives. That's 1 point. And the second point is, I don't know, I'm in my 70s, and I remember 50 years ago, at the late 70s, we are in exactly the same position now as we were in the late 1970s.
Isn't it weird, John, that there's always money for things the government wants to do, but there isn't money for things that they don't want to do? The winter fuel allowance, for example, everybody who got a winter fuel allowance last year could get a winter fuel allowance this year if we paid £1.4 billion. We're giving Ukraine, for example, I'm not saying we shouldn't do this necessarily, but we're giving them £3 billion a year. The fact is there's always money for things that are government priorities. They always find it. They don't find it for things that aren't their priorities and that they perhaps don't care about. But anyone in government who says there isn't enough money for this, well, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. You can just reallocate it from other places, can't you?
Yeah, well, you can. You remember what that lady said many years, 50 years ago, when she said, the reason socialism doesn't work is because you run out of other people's money.
Yeah. And
that's exactly what I agree 100% with what you said. When it's their pet projects, they can find any amount of money. Chagos, there's another example. They can find money, but when it's for the ordinary, hard-working people of this country, there's always a reason that they can't afford it. You know?
Yeah.
And I can't believe it. It's the 1970s, late 1970s. Where's it going to lead to this time?
Well, I think what Margaret Thatcher said is absolutely right. The problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. I'll tell you something. Mrs. Thatcher's legacy was celebrated in our office today. Do you know why, John?
Why is that?
Do you know what, on a day like today, I don't know what it's like in Cornwall, I hope it's as glorious as it is here in London, beautiful sunshine, clear skies. Do you know what I had? I had an ice cream. And you know Mr. Whippy ice cream? Margaret Thatcher basically invented that.
Yeah.
So we enjoyed it today ourselves as a little team. John, thank you for your call. You speak a lot of sense. That's John in Cornwall there. I appreciate that. And hopefully he can have an ice cream this evening as well. There's nothing quite like a nice ice cream. Ian is in Bridgend and wants to talk about tariffs. Ian, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us what you'd like to say.
Oh, hello, Peter. Yes, pleasure to speak to you.
You too.
Yeah, first off, can I echo the point that was made by the gentleman regarding Port Talbot? Reform will play the blinder here. You know, we've got this special reconvening in Parliament now tomorrow. Yep. And, you know, nothing at all for Port Talbot. So, you know, it's going to boost Reform's chances down here in South Wales now in next year's election. But, yeah, I was just making the point about Canada. You know, don't tar all the Canadians with the same brush, you know, at the moment now. You look at Alberta, there's been resentment there for year upon year at the way that the oil industry, the profits from that have boosted, you know, these socialist policies of Trudeau and now Carney again. There's a lot of resentment there, and repeatedly they've looked towards seceding to become the 51st state in America. You know,
I can't see that happening. Can you, Ian? Can you see Canada becoming the 51st state? Maybe Greenland will beat them to it.
Yeah, I think they've been trying for about 100 years now, but certainly, you know, there's a lot of pro-Trump feeling, certainly on that side of Canada, anyway, with the petrochemical industry and the pipelines and so on.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you make a lot of good points there, Ian. I appreciate that. It'll be very interesting to look and see tomorrow, as we will on my programme between 10 and half 12, about what's happening in Parliament, what the legislation looks like, what they want to do. And it's really, we're told anyway, the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, will have the powers to essentially nationalise British Steel. We'll be talking to someone from the GMB union a little bit later about that. For the moment, Ian, thank you for your thoughts. Georgina is in London, wants to talk about that interview interview with Frank McGuinness, the barrister who's representing Hamas. That was yesterday. Georgina, we looked back on it a little bit earlier in the programme today as well. What would you like to say?
Well, I'd just like to say I'm not going to blow smoke up your bottom, Peter, but I am going to say you handled this interview with a level of professionalism in which you handle every other interview that you do. I wouldn't expect nothing less from you. But I am going to say it terrifies me when you have people who don't know what the definition of terrorism is. These people walk amongst us. You can't change the ideology of a radicalised group. And I've got to say, you asked a very viable question yesterday, and it was a yes or no answer. And Frank McGuinness deviated the question and attacked you. And they do say attack is the best form of defence. The whole of the country saw that, my darling, and you handled it beautifully. I'd love to know who's funding this solicitor.
I should say that he has said it's not Hamas themselves. He's doing some of the work, at least, and perhaps even the whole thing pro bono, which means for free, essentially, for the public good, as he would see it, I would imagine, although I don't want to put words in his mouth. But certainly, they've been very clear they're not getting the money directly from Hamas, because that would be illegal.
Well, I've got to say that, you know, we see the bigger picture every day. It's called doing your homework. There's a World Wide Web there. You can find out an unbiased view of Hamas there. And to say that Hamas are not a terrorist organisation is like saying Harold Shipman was a good doctor. That's what I'm going to say. The ECHR shouldn't even contemplate accepting Hamas into their organisation. It should go against everything that they're supposed to stand for. And for every pound that Frank McGuinness gets for representing Hamas, every pound represents a dead body.
Well, we should be clear, Georgina, certainly, that he says anyway that he's not receiving money from Hamas. I'm happy to make that clear. And Georgina, really appreciate your comments and your kind words as well. It's a very, very controversial action that is being taken. But we've heard from David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, today. He says the government's not changing its stance. No chance that Hamas will not be designated a prescribed organisation. Leslie says, praising David Lammy, didn't Lammy demand Netanyahu be arrested if he should come to the UK? He's a hypocrite, says Leslie. Listen, Leslie, there are loads of things I will criticise David Lammy for, let me tell you, and I have on this programme. Maybe you've heard some of them, but on the particular comments that he has made to the Jewish Chronicle, to Lauren Bellcross and his colleague Jacob Jaffa on the Jewish Chronicle, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has said our position is simply not for changing. Hamas, which committed a barbaric terrorist act on the 7th of October, has long been designated a terrorist organisation in the UK. So on that specific point, I'm going to say, well done, David Lammy, which is not something I say very often. Michelle says if America stopped subsidising Canada, they wouldn't last a year. Well, certainly subsidies, control, nationalisation, that's going to be debated tomorrow in Parliament from 11 o'clock. We'll have full coverage here on Talk during my show between 10 and 12:30. In the meantime, Malcolm, who's in Staffordshire, has given me a call on 0344 499 1000. Malcolm, I think this is the first time perhaps we've spoken. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, firstly, Peter, lovely to speak to you, and thanks for having me on.
Good stuff. Go ahead, Malcolm.
The British steel crisis. This hasn't happened yesterday, has it? It's been going on for months and months and months and months and months and months. So maybe Mr. Starmer really should have got stuck in within weeks of him coming to power.
Yeah.
We do need steel. We do need manufacturing industry. We have enough coal, we have enough gas, and we have enough oil beneath the North Sea to sustain ourselves until the green plans come to fruition. Because if you go down the green route, there's going to be mistakes made. But if we've got a backup, you can allow those mistakes to be made. Yeah. But
do you think he's come to this too late, Malcolm?
Well, of course he has. And you know, it's like a bloke on a great big white horse rocking in. Look at me. No, should have done it when he came to power. Should have sat down and said, hang on, no, we're not having this. This bloke isn't a leader.
Yeah.
He's not a leader. And he isn't. And you know, we'll get them all in tomorrow morning. What? Hello, excuse me. I don't know what your boss would have said, whatever, 10 months ago with something to come up and say, well, yeah, let's talk about it a few months time. You wouldn't have been on the TV now, would you?
Well, indeed, and we do need to confront these issues just as soon as they come up. Thanks to a texter who says, Jonathan Reynolds dealing with Scunthorpe Steel, the pretend solicitor, what could go wrong? Great text. I think possibly my favourite text today, actually. Patrick's in Coventry, wants to talk about this as well. 0344 499 1000. Patrick, what would you like to say?
I'm very irate with what the Labour government did in Parliament a few days ago, where they tried to call a whole community as terrorists, when we all know the terrorists are from the M community. They've attacked Christians and Jews. Now they're trying to publicly attack Hindus. There's never been a Hindu terrorist in the UK.
How are they trying to attack Hindus? I'm not quite with you.
In Parliament, I don't know if you've seen it a few days ago. They publicly said Hindus are doing terrorism and all this jazz.
I just have no familiarity with that at all. When was that, Patrick?
5 days ago in Parliament.
Patrick, do you know what? I'm going to go and look that up, and then we can maybe have more of a conversation about it maybe a bit later in the programme, because it's just not something I'm familiar with. But for the meantime, thank you. We'll perhaps come back to you, Patrick, on that issue, because it's just not something I'm familiar with, and I want to make sure that maybe in one of the breaks I can read something about it. We're going to talk about the sport next. Keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000.
The government are not focusing at all on providing that reassurance to our many family businesses, hard-working businesses that keep our local economies going in places like Keighley, where I represent. It is deeply frustrating. Business confidence is at an all-time low. Indeed, I was with one of my manufacturing businesses, a mighty business in Keighley, just yesterday, but yet the narrative that they were communicating to me is they are deeply concerned about the additional overheads that is being put on them by the government's choices.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Patrick's back on the line. I've done a bit of reading about this. I just had no awareness of this whatsoever. A secret report compiled by the National Police Chiefs Council and National Body of Senior Police Officers states that Hindu extremists may worsen community relations between Hindus and other faith groups, including Muslims and Sikhs. Is that what you're referring to, Patrick?
Yes, but they in the report and how they read out in Parliament, they basically criticised all Hindus. That's the way they read it out. And that's
okay, well, I didn't see that in Parliament now, definitely. There's absolutely no suggestion that all Hindus are terrorists. No doubt about that.
There was one English gentleman, he stood up for Hindus and basically said, look, there were 50 houses attacked by people from the M community. People were actually beaten up, and nothing got done against the people that attacked people's houses that were Hindu. And people that stood up for their houses and defended their houses, they got done.
Right. Well, there's absolutely
not people attacking.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. Are you a Hindu, Patrick?
I wouldn't want to comment on that publicly.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, let me tell you something. We had a Hindu Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and not too many people batted an eyelid when he started celebrating Diwali at Downing Street, and there's absolutely no reason he shouldn't do that. And I just think that, you know, Hindus have given so much to this country, including rising to the office of Prime Minister, and certainly there's no suggestion whatsoever that, as what you say, that Hindus are terrorists. There are some, of course, there are bad apples in every ethnic group, of course, but very, very interesting point there, Patrick, and sorry I wasn't aware of it previously. Very happy to have a chat about that, and thank you to Patrick for that call. Now it is time for the
Sport Summary on Talk.
Uma Gaurav is with us. Your world and my world have collided, Uma, because Rishi Sunak's honours list is out. I haven't got a knighthood or a peerage, which I think is a massive oversight. But nonetheless, England's cricketer James Anderson, the fast bowler, has been given a knighthood.
Yeah, I was going to say you have to go into sport if you want one, maybe, because yeah. Jimmy Anderson's the only sports person to have made this list, but yeah, he has been knighted. He's England's all-time leading wicket taker in test matches. He retired from the test format last year, but you know, 42 years old. He's a bit of a legend, played in 188 tests for England, won the Ashes 4 times, and you know, he's still involved in the game in a lot of ways, but this is kind of so deserved. I think when you look at him, you just think so many years of England cricket success, and yeah, he's made it onto Rishi Sunak's list, but he's the only sports person to do so.
As has Michael Gove. We'll just leave that there. It's been a long-running saga, Uma, but we've finally got a decision on where Mo Salah will be playing football next season. What has the Liverpool star player actually decided now?
Yeah, well, as I've been saying all day, the celebrations are
See, we did that.
underway.
Very good, very good. Like it. That was a very special moment.
Oh, look at that.
We're a team.
Me again. We are
team awesome.
Awesome duo. But yeah, Mo Salah is staying at Liverpool. The news that so many fans have been waiting for. Obviously, there's been speculation, especially because Salah himself said a couple of months ago that, nothing's been said. I think I'm more out than in. And you kind of thinking, I'm not sure you actually meant that. Liverpool very clever with the video they released this morning on their social medias. Said more in than out on that was the caption. He's committed to a 2-year contract, and you know, he's 33 years old, so this is quite remarkable because by the time this contract finishes, he'll be 35, and that is quite old for a footballer. Yeah, but when you look at the form that he's in, and one of the reasons he's cited for staying is actually Liverpool kind of being knocked out of the Champions League so early this year. I think he wants to stay, and I think he wants to win it with them. They're going to win the Premier League, it looks like, this year, but he wants that big European crown in his trophy. The Egyptian king, and you have to say, if they continue in the form they're in, they've got a good chance of winning it in the next couple of years.
It was another difficult night for Manchester United's goalkeeper. What happened?
Oh, this is awful, and it's made worse by some comments that were said before the game. Basically, Manchester United went up against Lyon before the game. Andre Onana, the goalkeeper, had been asked, do you think you're better than Lyon on paper? And he'd said yes. Then one of Man United's ex-players, actually now plays for Lyon, had come back and said, Andre Onana's the worst goalkeeper in Man United's modern history. He should actually save some goals before he says anything. Lo and behold, what does Onana do? He lets in 2 absolute howlers. Man United ended up drawing with Lyon, and just the criticism against him today has been huge. Man United are now looking for another goalkeeper. That's how fast it happens.
Wow, my goodness. As Warren Buffett says, you can take 20 years to build a reputation, 5 minutes to lose it, although I'd update that to say 20 years to build a reputation, 1 tweet to lose it. Although I can be critical of Lyon too, in that I find their meatballs are quite expensive.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh,
anyway, the Masters Masters is taking place this weekend. Who are the early leaders in golf's flagship event?
Yeah, well, we were all expecting, Rory McIlroy for this to finally be the year. He won the Masters. He didn't get off to a great start. And it's actually Englishman Justin Rose who's leading. He was 9 under par at the last count. He's doing really well. He leads Bryson DeChambeau, who's 3 behind him. Rory McIlroy down in joint 20th at the moment. He's just 1 under par, so he's got a long way to go. The thing about the Masters, of course, as we know, everything can change before things kind of wrap up on Sunday. And Rory McIlroy, he's got a lot of skin in the game because he wants to get that Grand Slam. He wants to win this final tournament that he's just evaded him for so long, and he needs to be better than his 4-year-old daughter, because there was an amazing video.
I saw that. It was incredible. Talk us through this. This is the one who gets him. Do you know she gets him to read the children's book?
Oh, yeah.
About the owls, because of the way he says owl. He says owl. Rory McIlroy's from my part of the world. When we say owl, you say
owl.
Yeah. Anyway, she just
we say it right.
She gets him to read it just to basically troll him. Essentially, she's 4 years old. She's trolling her father. Anyway,
and then she trolls him in this amazing way.
By doing an amazing golf shot.
You can tell she doesn't even want to hit it. She's just holding it, and she just does like a little putt. And it goes slow as you like, just rolls into the hole. Everyone around her is celebrating, and she's just sort of standing there thinking, what on earth is going on? And then goes for a hug with Dad. You can tell she's a bit overwhelmed.
Are you familiar with the footage of Rory McIlroy as a sort of 10-year-old, 11-year-old putting the golf balls into a washing machine? Are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
So there's a very famous piece of footage. Obviously, we're very proud of Rory McIlroy from Northern Ireland. And there's this sort of TV show at a station I used to work at, UTV, and they had this sort of chat show on a Friday evening, and they had this little 10, 11-year-old Rory. He might even have been younger, maybe 8 or 9, and he's sort of I don't know what the word is, but he's hitting golf balls into a washing machine, and he gets the vast majority of them in. It's incredible. And they go, "Whoa, a star of the future. What's your name again, son?" Rory McIlroy. It's amazing. Honestly, look at it up on YouTube. It's an incredible
like an advert.
piece of footage. Yeah, well, it is. And actually, I remember Rory McIlroy was in the news, and I was reporting for Channel 5 News at the time, and I rang my old employer to get the footage. You got to ask them if you can use it. And there's a woman called Pauline. Said, "Pauline, I'm just ringing about," and she went, "Let me guess, the Rory McIlroy footage." And that was one of the most famous bits of footage from UTV. So it's a really incredible thing.
But now it's the Poppy McIlroy footage that everyone wants.
That's right.
Move over, Rory.
Move over, Rory. Your time is gone, and it's all about the daughter now.
Exactly.
Listen, thank you very much. That's Una Gaurav there, who is a TalkSport presenter. Lots of people getting in touch about all our different views and stories today, including Phil in Portsmouth, who says, "I don't believe anything David Lammy says. He says Hamas will never be given a non-terrorist status. He said it to a Jewish paper, which is what they wanted to hear. He slagged off Trump. Now suddenly they're best mates. He won't be thinking that at all. Let's see what the future holds. He turns more than a Phillips-headed screw," says Phil in Portsmouth. And Jane has been in touch and says, "Some might say Starmer has talked about boots on the ground in Ukraine more than stealing Scunthorpe. Now he has to bring his MPs off their holidays. Why wasn't this discussed a lot sooner in Parliament?" Jane, I think a number of people will be asking that question. We'll continue to ask the question. In fact, in the next hour, we're going to talk to Charlotte Brumpton-Child. She is the National Officer for Steel for the GMB Union. Let's see what she thinks. Her union certainly thinks that steel should be nationalised. Guess who also thinks that? Nigel Farage. Very interesting one there. We'll also talk about the MPs being recalled. In fact, John Cooper is a member of the Business and Trade Select Committee, and he is coming back from Dumfries and Galloway to debate this tomorrow morning. We'll have full coverage on my show, and we'll talk to John and to Charlotte in just a minute here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for your company. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is, of course, the show where you get your voice on the air. I want to make sure that as many people as possible between now and 7 o'clock, make sure you give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Parliament's being recalled tomorrow. The Prime Minister has made sure that all the MPs are coming back. We're going to speak to one of them in a minute. He's on his way from Dumfries and Galloway. He's a member of the Business and Trade Select Committee, so they are very much looking at the steel problem in Scunthorpe. What's going to happen? Well, a bit of legislation effectively nationalising steel in this country. We're going to talk to the National Officer for Steel for the GMB union as well. Lots of people getting in touch about this, including Stephen in East Yorkshire. We'll have a chat with him. If you want to add your voice to this discussion, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Also, the war on the motorist. Labour claims there is no war on the motorist, except for, you know, road taxes, ULEZ, low transport neighbourhoods, 20 mile an hour zones, EV taxes, luxury car taxes. There are, I would imagine, a bit more of a war on the motorist than some people might think. And we'll speak to the General Secretary of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association. We will get your thoughts, as I say. If you want to get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or indeed lift the phone and make the phone call, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss here on Talk. Well, within the last sort of hour or so, really, a little bit more than that, Keir Starmer has been speaking. He's made this statement about what is happening with British Steel and in regard to Parliament coming back tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock. We're going to bring you full coverage on my show tomorrow morning, which starts at 10 actually, but 11 o'clock Parliament starts. And this is what Keir Starmer has been saying today.
Good afternoon. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest to protect British jobs and British workers. This afternoon, the future of British Steel hangs in the balance. Jobs, investment, growth. Our economic and national security are all on the line. I've been to Scunthorpe. I met the steel workers. I know how important steel is, not just to the region, but to the whole country. It's part of our national story, part of the pride and heritage of this nation. And I'll tell you this, it is essential for our future. Our plan for change means we need more steel, not less. So we will act with urgency. Now, we should be clear, this situation and our response is unique. While it is true that we're facing a new era of global instability, our concerns about this plant and negotiations to protect it have been running for years. This moment could have happened at any time, but it has happened now, and I will not stand by. There is no time to waste. So we are recalling Parliament tomorrow for a Saturday sitting. We will pass emergency legislation in one day to give the Business Secretary the powers to do everything possible to stop the closure of these blast furnaces. And as I have said, we will keep all options on the table. Our future is in our hands. This government will not sit back and just hope. We will act to secure Britain's future with British steel, made in Britain, in the national interest.
The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, speaking a little bit earlier on this afternoon. Well, John Cooper is the MP for Dumfries and Galloway. He's a Conservative. He's also a member of the Business and Trade Select Committee. John, thank you for joining me. I know you are, like many MPs, coming off your Easter break and coming back to Parliament. You'll be there tomorrow morning, no doubt?
Yes, that's the plan. I'm on the Dawn Patrol flight to get there in time to take part in this. And I do think the Prime Minister talked there about acting quickly. I mean, this could have been handled at the start of the week. It seems remarkable. And it sounds to me like there's been a failure of the negotiations with the Chinese owners of British Steel.
He says it's been going on for years. Why didn't the Conservatives sort it out when they were in power?
So the situation has changed. Things have moved on. There's no doubt about that. We're in a different world now. And it's all very well, again, the Prime Minister talking about us needing more steel. Well, that may be the case. But in the past, we have tended to focus on price. So is he signalling a change of direction there? We don't know. Obviously, hopefully, some more of this will become clearer tomorrow.
What do you make of the legislation that is, well, I suppose perhaps you haven't seen it yet, but what the government appears to be doing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, you know this better than I do, is the government nationalising the steel industry effectively tomorrow?
I think effectively that's the reality here. I think there's niceties around it. This short-term legislation that will go through tomorrow almost certainly gives them certain powers. But I think we're on an irreversible drive towards nationalisation. I think that's the reality.
And is that the right thing, John?
I think we would have preferred a commercial deal. I think if we had some system whereby we could have a commercial deal with the owners and we had like a golden share for the government to give us some control over that, that would probably be preferable. But obviously there's urgency now, and we've been complaining for some time about the government dithering delay on all of this. The Business and Trade Committee issued a kind of interim report, if you like, and we made 5 points that we wanted to see the government take action on quickly. But all they launched was a series of reviews and reports and things like that. So time is pressing.
We're hearing that a bailout, essentially, and that is largely what it is on the cards. How much money do you think is reasonable from public money? We keep hearing, things are tight, taxes are very high, there isn't enough public money, we've got to put it into different things. I just wonder what you think is a reasonable amount of money for the taxpayer to pay in regard to getting control of Scunthorpe.
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't like to put a figure on it precisely, but I mean, it depends on the view. If we take the view that production of so-called virgin steel is absolutely essential to this country's security, then arguably you will have to issue a blank cheque, but it's very difficult. There are lots of pressures on finances, not least since the budget was such a disaster.
Some people will just say, we've just got to bow to the inevitable here and say that steel production in the United Kingdom just isn't viable. Should we just do that?
So I think one of the things we've got to look at is things like defence steel. And Sheffield Forge Masters was nationalised. It's effectively owned by the MOD, and it produces critical components for things like the reactors in our nuclear submarines and things like that. So the idea that somehow we're not going to have steel production in this country, it's a really serious decision. And again, the government needs to take a clear signal and indicate to industry what it wants.
Listen, thank you, John, for your thoughts on that, and I wish you safe travels as well. That's John Cooper, who is a member of the Business and Trade Select Committee. He's a Conservative MP for Dumfries and Galloway and is making his way down tomorrow morning to London to represent his constituents, and all MPs coming from all over the country. Parliament will be in session from 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll bring you some of that on my programme. I'm on between 10 and 12:30. We'll get all sorts of reaction to that. In fact, Andrew Rossendale, Conservative MP, is joining us before then at 10 o'clock in the morning, so he'll bring us through where things are at that stage. Stephen is in East Yorkshire. He's given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Stephen, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm so pleased that maybe we might be starting to see the death of, hopefully, this net zero madness.
Do you think that's what this signals?
Well, I can only hope and pray, because I think this has been a long-term problem, which, to be fair, was started by our illustrious leader in the past, Mr. Johnson, when he sort of embraced some of this. And I mean, basically, all it's done is decimate manufacturing in the United Kingdom, because you've got such high tariffs on everything. We've got the most expensive energy in the world, I believe, now. And
it's certainly very expensive, and a lot of people are very worried about how expensive it is. There are all sorts of problems with steel in this country. Should we be throwing good money after bad?
Well, how are you going to actually provide any steel for any manufacturing if you're going to be obligated to a third party? I mean, you would have thought parts of Europe have seen that with the energy problems, which have already been exacerbated with what's going on in the Ukraine. I mean, let's not get into the subject of Mr. Starmer's willingness to try and engage us in a European war, how's he going to build any sort of like armoured fighting vehicles if you don't make any steel?
It's a very fair point, Stephen, and thank you for it. I appreciate that. Phil is in Exeter and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Phil, what would you like to say?
Hi guys, thank you very much for putting me on. I would like to say, the man himself is actually going to recall Parliament. However, is Ed Miliband actually going to stop concreting in all the, I can't believe it.
Concreting in Ed Miliband?
Yeah, he's concreting in all the coal mines and everything else.
Yeah, the energy that's under our feet already in the race to net zero, Phil. So
yeah.
I mean,
I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, listen, he would say, Phil, that actually, burning coal pollutes the environment, and therefore we shouldn't do it.
However, if you look at the net zero policies, they're all actually by computer models, not actually facts and figures. And even the Met Office, they have a number of I can't. I do apologise.
That's okay. Listen, take your time, Phil. Yeah. Do you want us to come back to you, or are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. But the net zero policy is an absolute farce. And unfortunately, we are just making ourselves poorer and poorer and poorer because of flawed research.
Yeah, I think a lot of people.
Computer models.
Yeah. Sorry, finish your point, Phil.
Yeah, it's flawed research by computer models instead of actual facts.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do apologise.
No, don't apologise at all, Phil. Listen, you're a very good man for lifting the phone. A lot of people feel they couldn't speak on. There are a lot of people, I'm sure, have shouted at the radio, shouted at the TV, and things, and would have an opinion, but perhaps wouldn't pick up the phone. And I love it when people do, and please do. And if you ever feel you can't, just pick up the phone or send a voice note. You can do that on 0344 499 1000. You can record it as many times as you want. Just keep it to less than a minute and send it through to us if you would. Paul is in Norwich and has a view on this. You're very welcome to the programme, Paul. What would you like to say?
Afternoon, Peter.
Hi there.
I don't know, the list is endless. Perhaps we'll start with net zero. It's just been incredible, this absolutely crazy, stupid ride. And no one actually believes it.
Listen, I think there are a lot of people who will agree with you, Paul. I just wonder, with the steel plant in Scunthorpe, that parliamentarians coming back, interrupting their Easter break, I'm sure your heart bleeds for them, Paul, to come to Westminster to debate this. And what I know is that it's going to cost us, the taxpayer, an awful lot of money. Should we keep steel production in this country, do you think?
For sure. It's one of our main industries that Britain was famous for. It's always been famous.
But things have changed, Paul. Sorry, things have changed, Paul, haven't they?
They have, but only down to the fact that the net zero made it. The coal mines were shut down back in the 70s, 80s,
80s and 90s, really. Yeah.
Eventually in the 90s. If we had our own coal production, which we could still have. Why would we want to import from places thousands of miles away just to keep them going?
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
That's one of the reasons that I'm angry, that we're actually importing the coal just to keep the steel going.
Mm-hmm.
We could still have our own coal.
Let me tell you something about coal mine.
It seems like people are actually trying to ruin our country on purpose.
Do you know who? Margaret Thatcher obviously got blamed a lot of the time for shutting all the coal mines. Do you know who shut more coal mines than Margaret Thatcher? The number of coal mines shut under this person's prime ministerial period was far more than Margaret Thatcher. And the answer to that question is Tony Blair.
Yes, since Thatcher, I would say since the last 31 years. Whichever government has been in power, whether it be Labour or Conservative, the overall plan, or rather, let's just put it this way, there has been a deliberate and purposeful plan to ruin this country in one way or another. And you can tell it's deliberate or purposeful, or both of those, deliberate and purposeful, because it's so stupid. That is plainly clear to absolutely any idiot. So if it's deliberate and purposeful throughout the history of 31 years with Labour and Conservative, why is the public standing for it? Okay. Why is the public saying, OK, we voted for this, we voted for that, and when the government doesn't deliver, surely that isn't a democracy, is it? At the moment, now the Tories tried to sort of hide it, but they did it for the establishment, they did it for their bosses. But Labour does it in our faces. That's the only difference between Starmer and the bunch of Tory prime ministers that they had in succession. Okay. The only difference is Labour does it in our faces. And now, does it seem to you that Starmer's worrying? Does it seem to you that Trump's had a word in his shell-like and said, sort your act out, get back home, sort your country out, stop this net zero nonsense?
Okay.
It seems to me very much like Starmer's had a very, very serious word in his shell-like.
Well, we shall see what happens over the weekend, Paul. It'll be very interesting, and as I said, there'll be full coverage tomorrow on my show between 10 and 12:30, my usual Saturday show. Thank you to Sam, who's been in touch, says, Parliament being recalled sums up this government. It's totally reactionary, it's chaotic. It's not like what is happening in the steel industry has just appeared overnight. This has been going on for months. Why on earth did they wait until now? It's total incompetence and negligence. It is pathetic. Jane says, why couldn't they just sit on Monday? I mean, they could sit on Monday. That, I suppose, would mean that Keir Starmer thinks it's not that urgent. Parliament's actually not meant to be back for a couple of weeks. They've got quite a long Easter recess that they went into on Tuesday, and there's a couple of weeks that was meant to happen. So this is just a one-off thing that's happening, and they'll go back on that recess. Sarah in West Sussex says, I wonder whether Starmer is aware that British steel can only be nationalised because the UK is not a member of the EU. Ange in Edinburgh says, sorry, Ange, I always think of Abigail's Party when anyone's called Ange. I've got very beautiful lips. I don't know if you know Abigail's Party. It's a great drama. Mike Lee. Ange from Edinburgh says, Starmer should have been dealing with the steel issue rather than holding summits about Netflix programmes. I think a lot of people will agree with that one. And Graham says, why are all the police who have gone to arrest the shoplifting scum, where are they all? There were thousands at the summer riots. They've gone back into the woodwork. Also, they should be showing their faces to the media, and people have should have lost their liberty for stealing. Well, lots of talking points there. In fact, we're going to speak to the GMB National Officer for Steel, Charlotte Brumpton-Childs, and also Rakiba San, who's a social policy analyst. Quite a few guests coming up. We're going to hear from you as well as the hour goes on between now and 7 o'clock, when Kevin O'Sullivan will be here in this studio between 7 and 9, and then with what just happened between 9 and 10. Lots coming up. Be sure to get your call in, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
people don't intervene, that staff and colleagues don't sort of charge in there. Even if they manage to sort of catch someone, there's a question of what happens if the police take hours to arrive. How are you meant to, hold someone there? So it's a really difficult situation. And alongside this rise in theft is a rise in violence and abuse against shop workers, which is really concerning. Over 2,000 incidents every single day against shop staff.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
More on the steel crisis now. Charlotte Brumpton-Childs is the National Officer for Steel at the GMB Union. Charlotte, you may find yourself in a slightly uncomfortable position of being in the same, being a political bedfellow with Nigel Farage on this. He says that the action the Prime Minister is taking is on nationalisation, or effective nationalisation, is a good thing. Presumably that's your position as well.
GMB have long called for the nationalisation of the steel industry as far back as 2015 with the steel crisis that was rolling on then. I think Nigel Farage's intervention in the last couple of days is conveniently timed for the local election.
Just because you're cynical, Charlotte, doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. I wonder what the point of keeping steel in this country is, Charlotte. Why? I understand, I totally get it that you want to absolutely represent your workers, but there may be some taxpayers saying, hold on a second, we're probably going to have to fork out quite a lot of money for this. So just honestly, this question is said in an honest way, what is the point of having steel production in this country?
I think if you look to the infrastructure projects that are needed in the UK over the next 10, 15, 20 years, every single one of them needs steel in them. And in British Steel, we make some of the best construction steel in the world here in Scunthorpe, not to mention the world-beating standard of rail that we make as well. So we need the steel industry not just to deliver the infrastructure projects that the country are sorely needing, but also as a matter of national security. If these blast furnaces were to fail, then we would have no way of making our own primary steel. And with an ever-shrinking world and an ever-volatile world, it's really important that we maintain that ability should we need it.
What's the atmosphere like there in Scunthorpe? The people you're talking to, what are they saying to you?
I think there's a quiet optimism. We've been calling for government intervention, specifically around the blast furnaces and securing the raw materials for a couple of weeks now. And so I think that speaking to our members and our reps here in Scunthorpe today, there's a quiet optimism that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and also that at least for now there's a bit of security of the future for them.
There will be some people who will be cynical about this and will say, will wonder why the government is looking as if it's going to save Scunthorpe, but hasn't done the same thing with Port Talbot. I'm not asking you to answer this question on behalf of the government. I'm just wondering what your perspective on that particular issue is.
Look, I think it's a fair question, and it needs to be remembered that the demise of Port Talbot's blast furnaces was done primarily under the watch of Kemi Badenoch as the Business Secretary and her government of the time. I think that Keir Starmer made a clear election pledge during the general election last year to look at what they could do to save Port Talbot, but ultimately the election came too late for that workforce, and the deal was done before government got into power.
Charlotte, thanks for your thoughts on that. That's Charlotte Brumpton-Childs there. She's the GMB National Officer for Steel, joining us on Talk Drive this evening. Adam's been in touch with the West Midlands with a voice note on steel.
I run a medium-sized family-run scrap metal business in the West Midlands. I just want to send a note in today to say the green agenda and net zero philosophy, if you like, is having a strangulation on our sector, and it's having a crippling effect. We have to do whatever we can to keep these blast furnaces open by hook or by crook. It's crucial for suppliers like us and for the recycling sector in general. The green agenda needs to be knocked on the head as soon as practically possible, please.
Adam, superb voice note there. You've put it in such a clear way. Really appreciate that. Let's talk to Rakib Hassan. He is a social policy analyst. I believe it's Dr. Rakib Hassan, actually. Let's remember that. Rakib, I know you don't stand the ceremony, but nonetheless, I think if you've gone to the trouble of doing a PhD, I think we should probably insert it there. What do you think about this? Is Keir Starmer right to recall Parliament?
Well, I think that he was right. I think that this is all about strategic advantage, and I think that, to be honest, I think it's a bit of a shame, really, that it took a Republican president in the United States in the shape of Donald Trump to really encourage us to revisit our industrial policy. In my view, we don't have an active industrial policy in place. And I think that what was quite encouraging, we saw some of these recent figures where we had an unexpected level of economic growth. And we're seeing those positive signs from the manufacturing sector. And I think we really need to build on that. And I think crucially, we need to look at the possibility of developing a robust manufacturing sector that can support a stronger military, because I think that's integral to our national self-sufficiency.
It's interesting you mentioned that on the self-sufficiency and the importance of steel. Do people get that, do you think? Because there will be quite a number of people saying, oh, you know, another bailout for a failing industry here.
Yeah, I slightly sympathise with that view. I think it's understandable. But I think that when you have certain assets, strategic assets, which in my view should be under public ownership. I certainly don't think it should be under foreign private ownership. And I think that we can see that we live in an increasingly volatile and unpredictable international system. And people may well talk about, oh, we need to cooperate more with our European neighbours and all the rest of it. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable point to make if you want to have a responsible foreign policy. But I think in terms of our national self-sufficiency, I think it's integral that certain industries, that they are not open to foreign private ownership and they're brought under public ownership, especially when it comes to when they're connected to matters of defence.
Rakib, let's talk about one of the other big issues that Keir Starmer's been facing this week. What appears to me to be a shambles over what's happening with inquiries into the rape gangs. What's your take on that, Rakib?
Well, Peter, we talked about this many times before. I thought that the existing plans were already pitiful. In my opinion, I think
£5 million quid's nothing, isn't it? It's just nothing.
Exactly, and I think that what we need, we need a comprehensive national statutory inquiry which has the powers to compel witnesses and to take evidence under oath, because I think that's integral to determining public sector accountability and really understanding who were the individuals responsible for these gross institutional failings. And I think that you're not able to do that through a 3-month rapid national audit. I understand that this national audit, which will be led by Dame Louise Casey, is going to look at the culture and societal drivers of group-based child sexual exploitation. And that's fair enough. But I think crucially, we need to understand why institutions failed the way they did. What is the dysfunctional culture within those institutions which really drove those failures? And I think that with Labour's plans, this was a downgrading, what was announced, this sort of flexible fund where local council will be able to use this money. In some cases, the local councils were the problem. If you look at Operation Augusta in Greater Manchester, that was closed by Greater Manchester Police with the support of Manchester City Council. So much of this actually would be marking their own homework, when what we really need is rigorous independent investigations into these failures.
Do you think we'll ever get to the real truth? Do you think this will ever be an issue which is sorted, Rakib? Because we know that this is continuing today. We know that despite the exposure, despite many of the bits of very good work by the police and Crown Prosecution Service and prosecuting people who have been raping children, this is still something that happens today, and I wonder actually if we know whether it's better or worse than it was previously. I would imagine worse. But I just wonder, given the number of vested interests, the number of people who will work to cover up their role and will not take responsibility for this, because time and time again, I know you're as frustrated as I am, Rakib, when we hear, oh, lessons will be learned, and it just seems very rarely they actually are.
No, absolutely. And I think that in terms of whether or not there is a genuinely good chance that we will get to the bottom of it, and importantly, deliver justice for the many victims of these heinous crimes, I don't think that's going to happen under a Labour government. And I think the reason for that is because many of these institutional failures, which are connected to quite remarkable, some of the accounts that I've read of the violence, it's not too dissimilar to the actions of Islamist terrorists in conflict-affected territories in the Middle East. It's really not. Some of the accounts of the violence that's been faced by grooming gang victims is not too different to that. And I think the issue is that many of these institutional failures have happened in traditionally Labour-controlled areas. So I think that's why there's a reluctance when it comes to the Labour government.
Do you really think we can be that cynical? Do you really think we can say this is political? I mean, certainly Trevor Phillips said that the other day.
I don't even think that's cynical. I just think that I think that is the reality for me, that I think you have a Labour government who are very reluctant to investigate what is very much a nationwide problem, because that nationwide problem is disproportionately taking place in traditionally Labour-controlled areas. I think that's a big part of the problem here.
Rakib, thank you. Dr. Rakib Hassan there, social policy analyst, always speaks a lot of sense and gives great analysis. Always wonderful to have him on my programmes. Let me know what you think about what he has said, about what Charlotte Brunton-Childs from the GMB said. Do we need steel? And how can we deal with the gangs, those rape gangs, and how can we smash those gangs, never mind the gangs who are bringing people in across the English Channel? 0344 499 1000. We're going to chat in a second about the war on the motorists. I know Ian Collins spoke about this earlier on, but Steve McNamara is the General Secretary of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association, and I tell you something, you'd be very, I don't take taxis that often because, to be brutally honest, they're quite expensive, but I have rarely found a black taxi driver who has anything good to say about Sadiq Khan or indeed Keir Starmer. Is there no war on the motorists? That's what Labour says. We'll see what Steve says in just a minute.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, says there is no war on the motorists. She has said no serious person thinks tradesmen are being asked to swap their van for a bus. She said she's focused on real problems and not invented ones. She says there is no such thing as a war on motorists. I wonder what you think about that, because working families are forking out more than ever to stay on the road. Since entering number 10, Labour has backed controversial 20-mile-an-hour zones. They've rolled out more low-traffic neighbourhoods. They've hiked up car tax bills across the board, with even clean electric vehicles slapped with a £190 annual charge. In London, Sadiq Khan has expanded the ULEZ zone, and cars made before 2016, if you are a driver of those, well, it's £12.50 a day. The car tax rate is expected to rake in £1.7 billion from drivers' pockets. But there's no war on motorists, apparently. There's no war on the motorists. That's all nonsense. And no serious person thinks tradesmen are being asked to swap their van for a bus. Well, Steve McNamara is the General Secretary of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association. Steve, clearly there's nothing to see. I don't even know why we got you on. There's nothing to see here, is there?
No, you're absolutely right, Peter. There's nothing going on at all. There's no war on the motorists. The 20-mile-an-hour zones on roads like the A41, the A20, the A10, major thoroughfares and roads that used to be 40 mile an hour, in some cases 60 mile an hour. The fact that they're now 20 mile an hour.
Hold on, there are roads that used to be 60 miles an hour and now they're 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, an example, the Westway that comes into central London, the flyover, the A40, it used to be illuminated, used to have street lights the length of it, and the speed limit was 60 miles an hour.
Okay.
It's now 30 there, and they took the street lights down to save money, presumably.
Why is Labour doing this, do you think? Because is it just all about money? Do they genuinely hate the motorist?
Right. Firstly, I don't think it's particularly a Labour thing. A lot of this was started certainly under the Tories. Mm-hmm. What we have in big cities, certainly in London, is a situation where, to misinterpret Orwell, it's 4 wheels bad, 2 wheels good. I'm
going to use that again, Steve, and your fee is going to be 0p.
Right. Well, it's absolutely.
It's a great line. It's a great line.
So what happens is at Transport for London, at the local councils, at boroughs, at boroughs around the country and councils throughout the country, the traffic planners are white middle class men. They can ride their bicycles to work. They're young, fit men. They ride their bicycles the mile or the half a mile to work, and they genuinely cannot comprehend why everyone cannot do that. They really are. It's beyond their comprehension. So as far as they're concerned, you only have to look at some of the other schemes that they introduced. We've got these things called floating bus stops. I don't know if you've seen them. So the bus stop is stuck out in the road, and to get from the bus stop to the pavement, you have to cross the cycle lane.
Right.
So you've got a situation where the old, the infirm, the less able, the less wealthy, the people who are on the buses trying to get to work now have to run the gauntlet of a cycle lane to get to the pavement. I mean, it really is. This is the...
There are also a lot of people who, I mean, you rightly speak up for people who are less mobile there. There are also just quite a lot of people who just want to be able to not wait for a bus, perhaps, especially in rural areas where there are. I mean, I come from a village in Northern Ireland where there weren't that many buses, and my life changed when I got my driver's license. That was something that meant I had a huge amount of freedom, and I just wonder whether successive governments get that and realise that actually it's freedom, it's convenience, and also, not that you would know it from a lot of the London-centric media, but the vast majority of journeys done in the UK are done in a car.
Well, no, you've hit the nail on the head there, because a lot of policies are London-centric or metro-centric. So it's not just London; it will be the big cities around the UK, and they try to apply their policies to rural areas where, if you can't drive, you literally are stuck, or you haven't got a car, because, as you say, buses are very expensive. The other thing is, in London, buses are cheap. Public transport is cheap, so there are alternatives. Many parts of the country, that is just not the case. And it can cost you an arm and a leg to get from one side of somewhere to the other. And obviously people want to use their cars. That's what they're for. Now, I get the clean air argument. The clean air argument is well-founded. And to be fair to Sadiq Khan, he's done a fantastic job of cleaning up the air in London. But somehow we've managed to tie in 20-mile-an-hour zones with cleaning the air, which is not the case. What we've got, he set the Metropolitan Police a target of 1 million speeding fines to be issued this year. So this is a police force that up until very recently was in special measures. We've got an epidemic in London at the moment of street crime, with people having their phones snatched. I mean, my members report to me on a daily basis the number of phone snatches they see in London from people on these illegal bikes. And meanwhile, that's going on. We've got machete gangs, we've got all sorts of problems. And the target for the Met Police is to catch people driving at 24 mile an hour in a 20. It really is bizarre. And all of the things that you will read about the police and crime and how London's failing with crime, which it is, and the police are absolutely putting all their resource. Let me just give you a very quick anecdote. Just before Christmas, one of my members rang up. He was driving down Park Lane, big 4-lane road in London, and he saw some policemen hiding behind a bush with a speed gun. 20 minutes later, he's going past the Albert Hall, another big landmark, different policeman, speed gun trying to catch people. 10 minutes later, half an hour later, whatever, he's on the Bayswater Road, another big road in London, another group of policemen with their speed gun. As he drives past them and gets into the top end of Oxford Street, busiest shopping street in the world, world-renowned shopping street, there he is, 300 or 400 yards from Selfridges. There's a woman being mugged on the right. She's being dragged along by a handbag. And in the end, what happened? The bus driver jumped out and some people jumped out of vans and they helped her.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's just seen upwards of 8 or 10 policemen pointing speed guns at people while someone's being mugged a few hundred yards away.
No, listen, I know a number of people who reported similar things, and it's just absolutely horrendous. Steve, listen, thanks for your thoughts. That's Steve McNamara there, General Secretary of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association. Thank you to Jody in London, who says, I remember doing a speed awareness course, and the teacher said to me the DVLA guide doesn't always work for London drivers because roads with street lights and no speed signs usually can be assumed to be 30 miles an hour. Certainly I would assume that they would be 30 miles an hour for the street lights. That's a reasonable assumption. But most are actually 20 miles an hour in London, so it's catching a lot of people out in London. Michelle says, who wants to use public transport? Stabbing, sexual assaults, theft. People want to feel safe. Full stop. Angela in Edinburgh says, it's not a war on motorists, it's a war on the working class. Got to put us back in our box. Leslie says, if you use the Blackwall Tunnel in London, a return journey at peak times will cost £8, jumping up to £13 for large vans when it has previously always been free. There's lots of thoughts on this. Let me know yours, 0344 499 1000. Also, Michelle has been in touch about grooming gangs, rape gangs, let's call them what they are. Michelle says the reason they won't investigate is because it's not just because it's their voters, it's because the scandal goes all the way to the top. Why didn't the Conservatives do anything? In the 14 years they were in power, they also covered it up. So many in public office are involved. That's what they're scared of being found out, says Michelle. Lots still to discuss between now and 7. We'll also have a quick word with Kevin to see what's coming up on his programme on the other side of the news, and we'll talk to you, 0344 499 1000.
I was the political advisor in the Ministry of Justice, advising the Lord Chancellor. The Lord Chancellor obviously has meetings with judges fairly regularly. I wasn't allowed in those meetings because I was political. That's absolutely fair and right. But it's a two-way street. So when judges are deemed to be getting involved in politics themselves, then that's a serious problem. They need to be, and to be seen to be, politically impartial on all matters if we are to trust them and the system in which they operate to deliver fair and right justice.
on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Claire is in the Wirral and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Claire, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say? I think it's shoplifting you've given us a call about.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. Yeah, I mean, with the shoplifting that you were talking about earlier, we're definitely in a moral decline. I'm not condoning shoplifting, but I do understand it. Because if people in our country, British people, are being treated like scum and put at the bottom of the ladder, and the illegals, you know, are coming into this country and they're allowed to, you know, to stay in the country, they're given, you know, houses, benefits, driving lessons, then I can understand why people think, I'll have a bit of that. You know, I mean...
Well, I think you've hit on something there, Claire, because I do ask the question every now and again, and I think it's one I should maybe ask more. What is the benefit of following the rules? If you do everything you're meant to do, if you pay all your taxes, you know, you're a good citizen, you make sure you do follow the law, where's the benefit? Because I think so many stories on this network, so many stories come back to a very, very straightforward issue of fairness. And there are loads of people who just feel that they're just not getting a fair deal for all the tax we pay, all the work we do, all the contributions we make. We're not getting a fair deal. I mean, if you're a pensioner, for example, who's had their winter fuel allowance taken away from them, and you think, hold on a second, there's someone in a hotel down the road that I can't afford to go to who's there for free because they've come into this country and they've never paid tax, they've never paid national insurance. What's going on here? And I think you've hit on something very, very profound there, Claire.
Yeah, and I think that really we've lost our moral compass because our governments have lost their moral compass. Our establishments have lost their moral compass. The judiciary, the police force have lost their moral compass. And if this is happening in a country, unfortunately, it will become, you know, a free-for-all, really. I mean, that's what it's like in this country now. You know, people are getting knifed, you know, things are getting stolen. You know, it's just a decline, and we're in a decline. And if you want a country that is compliant, it obeys its rules, and people are paying their taxes, then don't treat them like second-class citizens.
It's a very, very fair point, Claire.
I think, although I'm saying, you know, I'm not condoning the shoplifting and the crime. You know, people are going to end up saying, well, why bother paying taxes? I'm going to work on the black.
Well, listen, a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are doing that. I'm not saying they should, and you're not saying they should either, but you can understand it to some degree. Claire, I'll let you go, but just before you do, I just let you know I did make that charitable donation that I promised you I would.
And I did also, Peter. I made for you, and I put on it with the Roy Castle charity. I put donated in the memory of a dear friend of Peter Cardwell.
Oh, that's very kind, Claire. Well, listen, thank you for that. I appreciate that. How's your health, Claire? What's going on?
It's okay. I had an MRI scan last week, and I had sort of, you know, the dye, you know, palaver. I don't know what it's called. I'm not really that well up on it. And, you know, that sort of was injected into my veins and all that. So I'm just waiting to hear back about that now. I think what's happened is that I've had a couple of these scans, and they've left it so many weeks in between, months in between each scan to see how, you know, the tumour is progressing, if you like. So, you know, to see whether it's an aggressive one or not. I've just got to see. But if I don't hear back in a week, I've got a very nice eye specialist. I originally went to see her because it has affected my eyesight, and she says get back to me, and you know I'll try and sort of push it. You've got
a good person there, Claire, and I hope she helps you. Well, we wish you well, Claire. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Phil has given me a shout from Hull. Phil, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter. Very interesting programme.
Thank you.
We were told, personally, I've normally been anti-nationalisation. I don't think they could run a chip shop. But in this instance, I think it's imperative. I think we can't be in a position of being the only G20 country that hasn't any steel-making capacity. Starmer wants to increase spending on the nation's defence, and I don't want our lads going out in electro-furnace steel tin cans in tanks, etc. And the other thing is, we were told earlier in the week that there was a 425,000 ton ship filled with coal for Scunthorpe that's in the Humber that hasn't been paid for. And so I'm wondering, because they said it could close by Saturday if they didn't get this steel, because it would be impossible to start up again. So why have we waited till Saturday to have a debate? And
well, listen, I think
there's the other thing about the coal mine in Cumbria. I thought that was supposed to be for the steel industry, that they won't open up.
There are so many questions around this, Phil, and I hope we get some answers tomorrow. We're going to be covering it in my show tomorrow between 10 and 12:30. Thanks for your thoughts there, Phil. Michelle says steel is extremely important. Anyone saying it isn't lacks brain cells. Jane says, where's all the electricity going to come from for all these new projects? And Dell and Salisbury says, if the MPs are coming back for debate on the British-Chinese steel, why can't they also debate the rape gangs? There's a far worse national disgrace. Well, I have debated it in Parliament, certainly over on many occasions, but you're absolutely right. It is a crisis and it's not being dealt with in the way that it should be dealt. So I agree with you on that. Let's see if we can get two more calls in before Kevin O'Sullivan comes in. Alan has been in touch from Salford. Alan, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
Yes, this showboat Starmer again here. He likes to have these face-to-faces with the BBC and on the country. It's just throwing good money after bad. Do you know why? Because unless he scraps this net zero doctrine, this nonsense, we're not going to be able to heat the bloody furnaces up because it's too expensive. Are they real, this lot we've got in?
Are you convinced we need steel, Alan? We can't just let it go by the wayside?
We've always had steel. We've always been proud of steel. And this, the way it's going, there'll be nothing left here. We won't be making anything. Oh, we might be making car batteries, electric.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
that'll be about it.
Okay. Well, Alan, listen, thanks for your thoughts up there in Salford. Appreciate that. Let's go to Kent. Graham is with us. Graham, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us what's on your mind this evening.
I'll be as quick as I possibly can.
Don't take your time. We've a little bit of time till Kevin O'Sullivan comes in. We're in no rush. Graham.
Mr. Starmer's being decisive again. Oh, he's making a speech. He's being decisive. But he's as decisive as my African grey parrot who tells me she's going to cut the grass all the time, but never does it. So
do you have a parrot who says it's going to cut the grass?
Yes, she says she's learned she's going to cut the grass, but there you go.
How often? Hold on. How often does your parrot say she's going to cut the grass?
Oh, quite a bit. And she tells me she's going to take the bin out as well, which she never does.
Really? She's going to take the bin out? Could you hold the phone up to your parrot and get the parrot to say it on the phone? Is that possible?
It might be, but she could say a swear word. You won't like that, will you?
Listen, we have a facility to cut her off if she says a swear word. But I am interested in the parrot who says she wants to cut the grass.
Right. Well, let's have a little look. See if I can get down and do it for you.
Okay. But tell us your thoughts on steel in the meantime.
Yeah, I think steel is Miliband's problem. Everybody's saying it now. He hasn't. I'm in the room where the parrot is, so she might start chatting.
What's her name?
Sorry, she's saying no.
What's her name? What's the parrot's name?
There's Jack the parrot.
Jack the parrot.
Oh, she's telling you look. That's what I'm saying.
Put the phone up to Jack there a second. Let's see if she can say cut the grass.
There you go. What are you doing? No. She's just biting the phone at the moment. She's a bit scared. She's biting the phone. Anyway.
Okay.
So if we go through, so the steel is we need blast furnaces. We need them. Starmer's woken up to that now if he wants to be head of coalition of willing. Is agriculture, they're all over the place with that. We've got to look after ourselves there. He can't make a decision. The police is a disgrace. Birmingham is an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, it's quite literally a bin fire. Yeah.
Yeah, emergency measures taken there because there'll be a terrible public health situation. And now, as we say, we look at the grooming gangs. They can't make a decision. They're swaying all over the place. And, you know, I mean, don't let's think he's going to do anything. Yeah. He's been forced into this, and he's not being managerial or demonstrating leadership, particularly calling things on the side. Anyway, I'm sorry to moan, but...
No, listen, get it off your chest. That's what we do here at this station. Sadly, we didn't hear the African grey parrot telling us to cut the grass, but there's always another show. Maybe the parrot will ring into Kevin O'Sullivan's show. I don't know. That was Graham in Kent there. Hello, Kevin.
Hi,
lovely to see you.
You never do those parrot stories. So how many times have I tried this? You read it in the paper, and there's some parrot that tells all the locals in the pub swears at them.
Yes,
and things like that.
yes.
So you get the parrot onto the show, and they never say a damn thing ever.
Very disappointing.
Parrots, they always let you down. Bit like Keir Starmer.
That was a beautiful segue.
Seamless.
Love it.
What's going on with this steel business? I mean, obviously, you know, I'm not trying to decry the fact that this is some kind of an emergency. We mustn't let the steel industry die. But is he sort of confecting this sense of emergency? He's trying to create...
It's been around for a very long time.
Exactly. Why suddenly? I bet he's not very popular among MPs. I think he's trying...
But it adds to the sense of crisis, doesn't it, Kevin?
Well, that's what he's trying to do, and I don't really like that. I don't think, you know, do it sensibly, do it properly.
It's like Palm in Gavin and Stacey. It's all the drama. I just love it.
Yeah, he's trying to say, I'm very dynamic. This is an emergency. I'm the man. I'm going to save you all. I'm not saying that we shouldn't put a lot of effort into trying to save the last vestiges of our steel industry. But is Keir Starmer just trying to make a thing of it, trying to make himself look dynamic? I think he probably is. And why didn't they do more to try to save Port Talbot?
I asked that question.
Why did they?